Before, so. Okay, meeting started. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So thank you all for joining us this evening for the April 19, 2022 Monte Sereno City Council meeting. Before the meeting is called to order, I would like to point out a few house rules to assist the council members, staff, and members of the public to successfully participate in this meeting. So council members, your microphone is live, so please keep your microphones on mute until you wish to speak. For tonight's meeting, we are using Zoom to host the city council meeting. At the bottom of the Zoom client, there are two icons, chat and raise hand. So please use chat only to report technical issues such as being unable to hear a council member speaking. Please use raise hand to be recognized by the mayor and able to speak to the council. To comment after oral communication or on any agenda item, you are allowed 3 minutes to speak per agenda item. Emails limited to 350 words can also be submitted to the city clerk and it will be read into the record. This word limit is set to adhere the typical 3-minute time allowance. Only attendees using the Zoom application can use raise hand option to comment. Participants calling in from a telephone will only be able to listen and cannot provide feedback or public comment. And lastly, well, at this point, not everybody's in the same room, right? But we do have one person via Zoom. All votes at this meeting will be taken by roll call. Like to have a meeting to order.
Thank you very much. And this is kind of an experiment for us. We're trying to do to see if this personal experiment works. At least 4 of us are here in person. Mr. Sean Luthall is on the screen. He's appearing on Zoom, and I assume there are people also, other individuals also appearing on Zoom. I will call the meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is a pledge of allegiance.
I'm going to go ahead and first do the roll call if you don't want.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the pledge of allegiance is before the roll call in the agenda.
Oh, sorry. Yes, actually, you're right.
So let's.
You're right. No,
No problem.
right.
So let's do the pledge of allegiance.
Sure, we're gonna stand.
Yeah, let's stand.
Is your mic on? What is it?
I think so. Yeah, Michelle, here's the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for doing that. Please go ahead and do the roll call.
Thank you. Councilmember Miller, present. Councilmember Luppold,
Present.
Councilmember Turner, here. Mayor Pro Tem Mekachuk,
Present.
and Mayor Loughnane.
Present.
Thank you.
Are there any changes to orders of the day? Are there any members of the public? Can you see the public chat on Zoom? Somebody able to see that?
Yes, Mayor, this is Michelle Michelle Stavilla, City Clerk. I am able to see public comment and participants on Zoom. And we do not have any public comment or oral communications at this time.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, that's good that you're able to stay on top of that. So we'll go to proclamations. We have a couple of proclamations. One has to do with the Arbor Day. That's Monte Sereno is now a tree city in the part of the United States of America. A wonderful event happened last week when Mayor Pro Tem Brian Mekachuk and City Manager Steve Leonardis helped plant 3 trees. I was there to just give them moral support, I guess. So we planted three wonderful trees, and I also have a proclamation for Arbor Day, which I'll read. Whereas in 1872, the Nebraska Board of Agriculture established a special day to be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can be a solution to combating climate change by reducing the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cutting heat and cooling costs, moderating the temperature, cleaning the air, producing life-giving oxygen, and providing habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable source, giving us the paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the community, economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they're planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now therefore I, Javed Elahi, Mayor of the City of Monte Sereno, do hereby proclaim April 19th as Arbor Day in the City of Monte Sereno, and I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. And I know we in Monte Sereno are really committed to that, and that's what makes the city such a wonderful city with all the trees that we have. I also have one more proclamation. This is a proclamation recognizing the celebration of Eid Al-Fitr, marking the end of the Islamic holy month of Ramadan. Whereas Eid Al-Fitr, also called the festival of breaking the fast, will begin on the evening of Monday, May 2nd and end on Tuesday, May 3rd. And whereas Eid Al-Fitr marks the end of Ramadan, Islamic holy month of fasting and spiritual renewal, celebrated by approximately 1.8 billion Muslims worldwide. Whereas the observance of Islamic month of Ramadan in the Holy Quran was revealed, commenced on April 2, 2022 and ends on Sunday, May 1, 2022. Whereas in the month of Ramadan, Muslims are reminded that the religion requires them to give charity, feed the hungry, and the needy, respect and honor their neighbors and all their fellow human beings. And whereas Eid al-Fitr is celebrated to pay respect to God for providing strength and perseverance to sustain the month-long fasting rituals. And whereas Eid al-Fitr falls on the first day of the Islamic month, Shawwal, the 10th month of the lunar-based Islamic calendar, a month symbolic of new life and the renewal after a month of fasting and spiritual cleansing. Now, therefore, I, Javed Elahi, Mayor of Monte Sereno, and on behalf of the City Council, hereby recognize the commencement of Ramadan and the celebration of the Islamic holiday of Eid al-Fitr, which marks the end of the holy month of Ramadan, which is observed and celebrated by over 1 billion people worldwide. And witness whereof I here to set my hand and fix the seal of the Monte Sereno this 19th of April 2022. So that's the two proclamations we're making today. And we can now go on to the main agenda items.
We do have one more presentation, it looks like, from Silicon Valley.
Yeah, we have, So there's a presentation of the Silicon Valley team. Is somebody here to present on behalf of Silicon Valley Cleaners?
We do have Zoe, who will be actually sharing her screen.
Okay.
Zoe, can you hear us?
I can hear you now. When you switched me to panelist, I switched over. Okay, are you ready for me to begin?
Would you like to share your screen for your
Yes, I
presentation?
sure will. Okay, if anyone has any issues, my screen is now being shared. If you have any issues with that, just let me know. Thank you all for inviting me and allowing me to take a few minutes of your precious time today. I'm Zoe Elizabeth from Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and I'm here to provide an informational update on new construction reach codes. So I've got 4 items on what we'll go over today. Just give you a really quick overview on community choice energy for anybody who doesn't know who SVCE is, talk a little bit about the benefits of electrification and the reach code process, and then answer your questions. So SVCE is formed by 13 of our member agencies in Santa Clara County. We are governed by elected officials from each of these 13 jurisdictions, and we were formed to provide clean energy and innovative programs to fight climate change and to provide electricity at affordable rates. How does it work? So just a quick high-level overview. What we basically do at SVCE is we purchase clean electricity from wind, solar, hydro, geothermal, and then that electricity is delivered through PG&E's pipes and wires to the customers across our service territory, businesses and residents across our service territory, bringing clean energy and local control of your electricity supply. Since our formation, we are really excited to just get to talk about the benefits that we've been able to bring to our communities through the leadership of our governing body. First is a 35% reduction in carbon emissions from since 2015. We have invested over $1.6 billion in new renewable energy projects. And perhaps most exciting in many ways is that we've saved customers $77 million in on-bill savings. And that's over $300,000 for Monte Sereno residents alone. So that's a little bit about SVCE. And now I'm going to get into a little bit of the meat of the discussion here on why electrify. Why are we talking about new construction reach codes that help to accelerate building electrification and transportation electrification? And so one reason is that electrification helps to improve air quality and public health. Some of this may just seem like common sense when we think about it, right? So we all probably aware that NOx emissions are hazardous and a significant contributor to childhood asthma and other health impacts, particularly to the elderly and young. What people might not know is that in California, building appliances actually emit more NOx than all of the state's power plants. So it's really critical if we want to really clean up air in California to focus on NOx and appliances. And there's been a lot of research done more recently on the health impacts, particularly of combusting gas within the home from stoves, and demonstrated the increased risks to children and asthma from gas stoves. Another reason is that building all electric saves money. So again, in some ways, as I state this, it may seem like common sense, right? When you build all electric, you reduce the need for new gas line hookups. Those gas line hookups are expensive and resource intensive, so not needing to bring that gas line to a new home or commercial building saves money. And also building all electric now reduces the need for costly retrofits later. As the state moves towards a zero carbon economy and then over the next several decades, we will need to retrofit buildings. So building all electric now, it's the most cost-effective time to build electric, to bring in the EV charging that's going to be needed for future demand. Just makes sense to do it now at the start of construction. Said another way is building all electric helps to future-proof buildings. So last picture you saw of what we call our future fit home. It's a commercial diagram, but we thought we'd also just bring a picture that might be even closer to home. I guess for those of you who are in Monte Sereno right now, you can look out and see your City Hall building just through the window there, right? So Monte Sereno is planning or considering to retrofit the City Hall, which will have all, in that retrofit process, we'll have all electric appliances that would be standard in all electric construction. So if it shows up on your slide, we've kind of put an asterisk next to the appliances that would be standard in all electric construction, the heat pumps, EV charging, et cetera. And related to that, EV reach codes really help to ensure that there's sufficient charging infrastructure to meet future demand as California moves towards a 2035 goal of no more internal combustion vehicles. It's really important that we're planning and cost effectively installing infrastructure to make that efficient and affordable and achievable for all in the future. And really close to our mission here at SVCE, electrification is climate friendly. So as I mentioned at the beginning, SVCE's fuel mix today is carbon free, right? So the electricity that you're using in Monte Sereno is already carbon free, but statewide, the grid will be carbon free by 2045. And numerous reports have shown that the least expensive way to reduce statewide emissions is with building electrification. And what this chart shows is a comparison of mixed fuel buildings versus all electric buildings in 2020, how you could get to a 45% reduction just today. And that's statewide. Of course, in our service territory, that would be greater because the fuel mix is already carbon free. and then shows that same at 2050, just the larger reduction in emissions through building electrification. So that's an overview of the suite of reasons of why to electrify. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about reach codes and new construction reach codes particularly. So I just want to be clear, everything that we're talking about is new construction right now. So what is a reach code? I'm sure many of you are familiar, but I also just going to refresh anybody's memories. Is the reach code is a tool to help tip the scale towards more electrification. It's a locally adopted enhancement to the state code, and our member agencies, including Monte Sereno, in 2019 adopted reach codes focused on building electrification and expanding EV charging in new construction. Reach codes are really essential to helping to accelerate electrification. Although in California, our building code is considered really forward leaning on things like on energy efficiency, for example. It still allows for both electricity and fossil fuel combustion, natural gas, what we call mixed fuel buildings. And without reach codes, most new buildings would still be built to utilize natural gas and electricity. Mostly really just because that's the way that things have been done in the past, and that's where the momentum is. And also it's likely that there'd be really limited support for EV charging, and that there wouldn't be the build out for the EV charging infrastructure that's really needed, again, to meet that future demand. So this is the reason that our jurisdictions came together in 2019 and asked SBCE to provide support on reach codes. And 12 out of 13 adopted reach codes. And then really important, each jurisdiction determines their own approach. As you'll see in the future, in a couple of slides, there was a variety of approaches in 2019, and we anticipate that in this next building code cycle the 2022 code cycle, there also will be a variety of approaches. So here's an overview of what the 2019, what our member jurisdictions did with reach codes in 2019. But before I say that, I always do like to say that really the efforts here locally really made a difference, that the state building code goes further on electrification. The 2022 state building code goes further on electrification than they otherwise were planning to. And we heard a lot that was because of the leadership shown by jurisdiction, stating that there was the technical, financial, political feasibility and will to move towards more electrified buildings. So this I'm just going to go briefly through what these different terminologies mean to give you a sense of what your options are for the next code cycle as well. So first is something that's called electric preferred, and that's what the track that Monte Sereno took. And what electric preferred does is it allows for mixed fuel buildings with high energy performance, but also requires energy panel and wiring to be basically pre-wired. So if, as an example, if a gas hot water heater is installed, the building would still need to include the electricity, the wiring, so that when the building was retrofitted in the future, it'd be simpler for the future owners. And then there's something that's called mostly electric, and you can see 4 of our jurisdictions took this approach. And what mostly electric means is it says that usually, for example, water and space heating must be electric. It doesn't allow the option for natural gas appliances, and then also requires that electrification ready for any of the appliances such as cooking that are mixed fuel. And then there's something called all electric, which requires basically all the appliances to be electric with very limited exceptions. For example, sometimes there would be exceptions for outdoor uses, but it says that all appliances would be, or there could be exemptions for certain building types, such as hospitals, where there's not really a feasible pathway. And then the 4th approach is colloquially called a gas ban. Instead of an amendment to the energy code, it's a municipal ordinance amendment, and is really similar to the all electric reach code in that it really says, you know, all appliances, no future gas hookups. And we had one jurisdiction, Morgan Hill, that took this approach. And then Gilroy was our one jurisdiction that did not adopt a reach code last cycle, although they do appear to be very interested and are pursuing the process with this code cycle. Yeah, okay. And then on EV charging, 9 of our jurisdictions, including Monte Sereno, adopted an EV charging reach code. And these reach codes basically require a higher percentage of EV infrastructure than is required by the state code. So this is what happens in the last code cycle. I can tell you that we're working right now with all 13 of our jurisdictions to hear what they need from us in this code cycle, and see activity among all 13 of those. I can't say exactly which of these buckets each of the jurisdictions will pursue in 2022, although so far folks are really interested in staying where they are, or perhaps moving a little bit further up the scale towards more electric. And then I'm going to give a short overview of what the 2022 California Building Code looks like this year, because as I mentioned, it has moved further. And I also have 2 colleagues on the call with me today, Farhad from TRC and Peter from SDCE. So hopefully they also have been made presenters, because they'll be able to help answer any questions around the code if needed. They have more of those details than I do. So the big picture, as I mentioned, the state really went further on electrification in this code than they have in the past. And what it boils down to is that electric heat pumps are the prescribed recommendation for residential space heating and cooling, which means that most space heating and cooling in new buildings in California, residential buildings, will be all electric. In non-residential buildings and commercial buildings, they must include either one or both water heating and HVAC to be electric, depending on the building type. Residential, in addition, there's a performance credit for all electric buildings. What that means is it means that it's easier and more cost effective to meet the standards of the code by building all electric for residential buildings. There's additional requirements for ventilation rates for gas stoves, again, because of the information that's come out on the health impact. So additional ventilation is required for gas stoves, which again creates increased costs if that's the choice the builder makes. Pre-wiring is required for all residential buildings. So pre-wiring for electric was the reach code that Monte Sereno adopted in the last code cycle. So you can see you were forward thinking there, that this is now what the state requirement is. There's also a requirement for energy storage readiness. So that's not, batteries are not required. People have asked that, just that the wiring needs to be ready for energy storage in case it was the building owner wanted to install it in the future. And then in non-residential buildings, there are now requirements for both solar PV and battery storage. So there were previously solar PV requirements, and now battery storage is also required under the 2022 code cycle. Okay, so that's a quick overview on the what of reach codes. The next couple of slides are really on the how of reach codes. Here's a general timeline that we've put together for our member agencies to have an understanding for those who are considering this, to make sure that everything's on track and it's as easy as possible for you. First is to kind of define the goals, to think about what it is that you want from a reach code. The next is to agendize the code, the readings. Often there's a first and second reading, make sure that they're on the calendar for the fall. Engage any necessary staff, and then define the approach, which means thinking through which part of the energy or building code that you would like to update, or if there's interest in a municipal ordinance amendment, and that's kind of think of it as the technical details of how this gets done. Signing the letter of interest. So SVCE provides, in addition to technical assistance, we're able to provide a $10,000 grant to compensate for the staff time that's necessary for REACH codes. And we have sent out letters of interest to all of our member jurisdictions, signing that and getting it back to us so we know that you're interested. And then there's writing the code language, conducting outreach, conducting council info sessions, voting on the code, and then potential SCEC submissions towards the fall so that the code is ready to go into effect on January 1st, and there's no awkward lags between when the 2022 state code is adopted and when your REACH code is adopted. In addition, through conversations with Monte Sereno staff, we have developed this specific REACH code timeline that includes the meeting that we're having right now, this information session, and then also additional presentation to community outreach and to your youth commission, to come back in September to propose alternatives to the REACH codes at City Council, and then for the first and second readings in October and November. That is my presentation. This is my contact information. You're welcome to email me with any follow-up questions or suggestions or thoughts, anything that you have of in REACH codes that comes up after this meeting. But I'm also here to answer any questions tonight that you may have.
Thank you very much. We'll turn to City Council to see if anybody has any questions. Yeah, please go ahead.
I have a question for you. Thank you for being here today. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're a little bit faint, but I think I can hear you.
There used to be a,
Yeah, these are connected, I guess.
do we need to,
Just press the button and there's a
Press the
green
button.
light that comes on. But not working.
Where's the button? There's a button at the bottom.
sorry, we're new at this.
No worries.
It's not coming on.
If you pick it up, do you see the button or not?
Yeah, I see it, but it's not coming on.
Try this one. We'll try this one.
Okay. Can you go? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
I can, yeah.
I certainly support renewable energy, but I have a question about the rates.
Mhm.
We already have some of the highest electric rates in the nation, and they're only going to go up. PG&E just got a 9% rate increase, and they're already asking for another 22% increase. My recollection with SVCE, and I could be wrong, is that you committed to pricing at 1% lower than PG&E.
Mhm.
And is that correct? And so if PG&E raises their rates, does that mean that SVCE raises its rates also? When PG&E gets a rate increase, does SVCE get a rate increase minus the 1%? How does that work? Can you let me know, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And so how you have spelled it out, that is exactly how that works today. That we do mirror PG&E's rates with a with the 1% reduction. So, and you are also absolutely right that PG&E's rates have recently gone up, and we do hear that rates will increase over the next year. And so the way that our rates work is that we do track those rates, but there is a discount compared to PG&E. What I can say, and Farhad may have some additional information on this too, is that natural gas rates are also going up. And so the projections looking over the long term is that the greatest stability for utility bills still remains through electrification, and that right now a lot of, at least in this most recent rate increase, that a lot of the the fluctuations in natural gas are causing increases in electricity rates. So you are absolutely right that there are increases in our rates. We still remain competitive to PG&E, but we just also want to point out that natural gas rates are also increasing. And so it's important to kind of keep in mind that, long term, the increase in natural gas is expected to go beyond the increases in electricity.
So what was your answer? Are you looking at 1% lower than PG&E?
Yes. Our board just adopted that as our continued practice at 1% lower than PG&E.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from council?
I have another question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted you, we just bought an electric car, a Tesla car. And the expense is of an electric charging station is not trivial. We looked at putting an electric charger in our home. The cost of the equipment was under $1,000, but the bid to install it was $15,500. Plus the cost from PG&E, which PG&E would not tell us how much it would cost until we install the project, right? Until the project was finished. So this is a burden on a lot of citizens, because $1,000 plus $15,500, and then PG&E doesn't tell you how much it's going to cost, is going to be very difficult for not only our residents, but for California in general. Can you make a comment on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So first comment, you're underscoring the reason why we think new construction reach codes are so important, because the most cost-effective time to install charging is when the building is built. It's just, right, you don't have to, it's easier to put wires in when there aren't walls there than to break into walls and to put wires in. So it's absolutely what you state is the rationale behind new construction reach codes. It's when it makes sense to do this across all building types. And then the second, I just want to make sure, did you say that the quote you got was for $15,000 for installation? I have not heard, that's incredibly high. I don't know. It absolutely, it's going to be more cost effective to do anything at new construction. But I will say that's much higher than any of the installation costs we have heard from the projects that we work on. So I don't know if there's something unique about the property.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? I guess we'll go back to the citizens or any individuals online who would wish to ask any questions. If not, I guess we'll come back to council, and we will thank you for making your presentation. It's very, very helpful. And it really is helpful to get people who are constructing new homes. And I know some of the people in the audience are thinking about it. So get it done with all the information. It'll be cheaper in the long run with the electric appliances and all. And also the person who's buying the home will find that it's been properly installed. Things are there to have the install items. So thank you very much. So appreciate it. I'm sorry. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a comment. Perhaps you could put the timeline up, the Monte Sereno timeline. And I'm not sure, Zoe, if you're the one with the screen share.
Yeah, I can do that.
Perfect. So we are at the April, so that's the milestone. That's tonight. And then the next one is to do something for the Youth Commission. So that's with our Youth Commission. And then sometime during July, August, you're going to do some outreach with the citizens of Monte Sereno, correct? Zoe?
Yes, yep, that's right.
And then based on the feedback, we'll have alternatives presented to us in September. That's when we'll have to make a decision and take some action. Because then you'd come back, or our staff would come back with the reach code ordinance as we selected in October for the first reading of it, and that would be a yes or no vote on that. And then whatever it is, then 30 days later, we'd have the second reading. And that would be in parallel with the adoption of the 2022 California building code. Did I summarize that correctly?
Yep, that's my understanding.
Correct. Okay, so that's what's ahead for city council.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Thank you, Zoe, again. Appreciate your input. There really is a climate crisis out there, and it's great to see in only 5 years you've saved the Monte Sereno residents about $323,000, reduced carbon dioxide by about 35%. So keep up the good work, and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is oral communication. Are there any individuals wishing to address the council on any matter that is not on the agenda? So things that are on the agenda, you can address us at that time. And you may want to give everybody a card, whoever wants to speak. I guess that's what we used to do. I don't know if you're still
Yes,
doing
we
that.
actually have the cards located up there.
Okay, so there are cards you can fill in your request to speak, and if you hand them to the clerk, they will make sure we hear you. There are no oral communication, nobody on the screen. Michelle, do you know if anybody wants to speak?
No, there is no raised hands on the screen.
Thank you. Any written communication that have been addressed to city council? That is,
You guys have received all the communications.
yeah, we received.
And I've updated the website as well.
All right, perfect. There are no other written communication except what you sent us. All right, thank you. Next, we go to the consent calendar. There are 7 items on the consent calendar. Does any member of the council wish to pull any of those items from the consent calendar? Hearing none, is anybody there on Zoom or in the audience who would want to pull anything from the consent calendar?
There are no raised hands, Mayor.
All right, hearing none, then do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Lawler, is there a second? I'll second. Second by Member Pro Tem Makachek. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Luthold,
Yes.
Councilmember Turner,
Yes.
Councilmember Lawler. Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Makachek
Aye.
and Mayor Wahi.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. We then move on to public hearings, unfinished business, and there's no unfinished business, so there's new business now. And the first item is the consider and provide direction to staff on SB 9 ordinance modifications. Staff recommends that the city council direct staff to prepare a draft ordinance to revise the muni code standards for SB 9 residential development projects as follows. A, review the maximum building size allowed, review the code for square footage limitations, and review the impervious coverage requirements. I assume there's a staff report, so please go ahead. Presented by our planning commissioner, Ms. Diane Perkins.
Good evening, I'm Diana Perkins, the city planner. In September 2021, the governor signed Senate Bill 9 into law, which requires that local jurisdictions allow ministerial approval of up to 2 housing units on each single-family zoned lot, and for the approval of a 2-lot subdivision for each single-family zone lot. In January, the council adopted an ordinance to incorporate the state SB 9 legislation into the municipal code.
Let me just verify they can hear you. Can you hear Diane?
Not very well.
Okay.
Yeah, you may need to get
Very
more close to the mic.
soft-spoken. Sorry, it's okay.
Yeah, how about on Zoom? Were you able to hear Ms. Perkins? Ron?
Yes, she was fine.
Okay, good. Thank you. So just the audience here.
In January, the council adopted an ordinance to incorporate the state SB 9 legislation into the municipal code and adopted additional requirements for such projects. Since that adoption, staff has received many inquiries from customers about potential SB 9 projects. However, no applications have been received. The feedback that we have received is that the 800 square foot maximum building size that is currently allowed makes such projects not feasible. The council did receive a letter on March 22nd from Berliner Cohen, which raised legal questions regarding certain aspects of the city's ordinance. Staff has met with the property owners represented in that letter and their designer, and they've asked the city to reconsider certain aspects of the zoning ordinance, including the maximum building size allowed, square footage limit on covered porches, impervious coverage limits, and the inability to use a discretionary review process for construction on lots created by an urban lot split. In attachment 7 of the staff report, you will find examples of how these property owners' lots could be split into 2 lots and where a new house could likely be constructed. These are intended to illustrate how the SB9 regulations could be implemented if modifications were made to the current building size limitation. Additionally, staff has been continuing to work with ENC Planning Group on the housing element update. And as we will hear in more detail with the next agenda item, based on our preliminary data collection and assumption of the site's inventory, we are short of meeting our required housing allocation of 193 units. Revisiting the SB9 ordinance to include development standards that would make such projects more feasible would be one method to create new housing units and close the gap in the city's required housing allocation without specifically rezoning to allow multifamily housing. For these reasons, staff recommends that the council direct us to prepare a draft ordinance to revise the maximum building size allowed, review the covered porch limitation and impervious coverage requirements for SB9 projects. And this concludes the staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I know it's a very complicated issue and we addressed it initially when the law came out. So this gives an opportunity to look at it again. So first of all, council, anybody on council have any questions? Councilmember Turner, I'm sorry, Councilmember Lawler, please go ahead.
All right, thank you. First of all, I'd like to disclose that I did meet with Tony Jeans, Kevin and Ann Hayes, and Trevor Schwartz for informational purposes only. And my question is for Sergio. When we passed these objective standards, I was under the impression that if an SB9 lot split wanted to build something in excess of 800 square feet, that would trigger an SNA review?
Not necessarily. So the way that the city's regulations work is that they impose a limit of 2 dwelling units of 800 square feet, basically they impose a limitation that on the lot split lots, you can only construct 2 dwelling units of up to 800 square feet. SB9 additionally creates a ministerial approval process for projects, either 1 or 2 dwelling units on any given lot. So people can either apply for a single family home or, a 2-unit in whatever configuration they would like. And that is required to be approved ministerially by staff without public hearing. Now, since the city set an 800 square foot limit for those types of projects, there would really be no reason for somebody who obtained a lot split to go and seek, SNA, like a site development permit from the city for their project, since they can get that permitted ministerially under the other provisions of SB9, if that makes sense.
Well, it sort of does, but you're saying if they split the lot and decide just to build one house, that's still ministerially approved?
Yes.
Are there any way to make exceptions to that?
Not that I'm aware of. So I am aware that certain jurisdictions are basically looking at the provisions from the 2 SB9 statutes separately. Basically, the lot split provision requires that you approve the lot split ministerially, subject to whatever objective development standards the city wants to impose, including it can impose design standards on whatever can be constructed on those lots. Now, a number of jurisdictions, including this one, have interpreted that provision, the lot split provision of SB9, as only allowing objective standards on lots that are created as a result of that process. So short answer, at this point, the city's regulations don't really allow for discretionary review of whatever is going to be constructed on the lot split. And additionally, I think that that is sort of the intent of the statute.
All right, thank you, I'm done.
Mayor Pro Tem, thank you, Jack.
Yes, City Attorney Rudin, is our ordinance, does it meet the requirements of the law, or is it unlawful?
I think that our ordinance currently meets the requirements of the SB 9 statute as written.
Okay. This is a question for our planner. We have to go through and determine how we're going to meet the RENA numbers. You're nodding, so that's correct.
Yes.
So, and we have engaged someone to help us do that, a third-party consultant to help us do that.
That's correct.
Okay, when are we going to hear back from that person? Where are we in that process?
So the next agenda item on tonight's meeting is an update of our housing element, including the site inventory, which would be sites that are possible for development of additional housing units, as well as our projected ADU count that we can include. And again, this information is preliminary and presented to the council for your feedback, and of course staff will further analyze it. But at this point, we are short about 19 units with the best case assumptions.
We're short 19 units. So if we were to change our SB 9 ordinance, which I'll call it the SB 9 ordinance, then that may help us get to the number, our RENA allocation numbers. Is
That is
that
correct.
correct? Okay. So this is just questions, not comments yet, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
questions so far.
And I will ask one more question. As I understand it, the City of Monte Sereno could have more ADUs in our city that are called actual ADUs. But maybe that is a discussion that we have to have in the next session. So, sorry.
So yes, we can certainly discuss it now or with the next item. But the accessory dwelling units have certain requirements under the building code in order to count something as a housing unit, in terms of kitchen facilities, bathing facilities. And so we count those and determine whether something is an ADU or an other type of accessory structure through our building permit process. So it includes all of the elements that are required for a dwelling unit under the building code. We count it as an ADU.
So could I retroactively say that I've got an ADU if it passes a checklist? Even
Yes.
though it wasn't designed specifically as an ADU?
Correct. You could alter an existing accessory structure to, or a portion of your house to an ADU, and then that would count as such unit in our RENA numbers.
Okay. Do junior ADUs count in our RENA numbers, or not at all?
They do not.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Turner, please. go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused here. Maybe I'm way in the back. You guys understand this, but my understanding is if I have a lot in Monte Sereno, I can take that lot and split it either 50-50 or 40-60. And on both sides, I can have a single family unit on one lot, a single family unit on the next lot. So now I have 2 lots. I can have an ADU on each lot. So that makes 4, and I can have a junior ADU on each side.
No. Correct. So under our current regulations, if the lot is split under the SB9
Yes.
provisions,
Yes,
each new lot, each of the 2 new lots are limited to 2 units each. And any new structure is limited to 800 square feet. So if you were to split your existing lot, presumably there's one house would be on one of the lots. And in most cases, the other lot would be vacant. So the vacant lot could have 2 buildings of 800 square feet. And the other lot, if you retain the existing house, you could have 1 more unit of 800 square feet.
I got 2 800 square feet because the single family home is 800 square feet and the ADU is 800 square feet. Is that how I got 2?
Correct. And just a
Okay.
technicality under SB9, it's just 2 units, 2 main units. It's technically not an ADU. But it's 2
Say that
housing.
again, please.
So technically under an SB9 project, the new house is not an ADU. It's 2
Right.
main units. So
Right.
there's different regulations than the ADU regulations.
Okay, so if I have an existing home that I want to put an ADU, and you said I can modify it, right? So are you talking about a JADU or an ADU?
So
Because
on-
it's a single family home, and I'm modifying that single family home. I'm not creating another unit. If I'm not creating another unit, that's a JADU, right?
So a JADU has certain limitations. It can be 500 square feet. It
Mhm.
has to be part of your main house.
Mhm.
It cannot have a separate entry
Mhm.
from the outside. So there's a few more restrictions on a JADU.
Uh-huh.
So on your existing lot, irrespective of SB9, but just under the regular zoning standards, you can have your main house, 1 ADU and 1 JADU.
Right,
Where SB9 comes in on an existing lot, you can also have 1 additional housing unit
right,
of 800 square feet in Monte Sereno.
right.
If you split the lot under SB9, then each new lot is limited to only 2 units.
Okay,
So you don't get the additional ADU or JADU if a lot is split under SB9. So it's still in the same lot area. The idea is it's still sort of the same for maximum units.
And basically, the SB9 statute actually reads to say that if you use the lot split authority, that a city can prohibit you from also using both the 2 unit and the ADU authority. So generally, in light of the legislative history, people have interpreted this language to say a city can lawfully limit the lot split to require that people cannot construct more than 2 units on a split lot, whether that is, a main unit and an ADU or 2 main units, it doesn't really matter. The city can allow either of those combinations. Functionally, Monte Sereno has limited it to 2 800 square foot dwelling units. So it doesn't really matter whether we call it an ADU or a second main unit.
and just to be clear, once you split a lot, you can't split it again forever
Correct.
Under SB9.
under SB9. So we're gonna have a database that keeps track of this, right?
We're prepared for it, yes.
Any other questions, Councilmember Turner? Thank you. Councilmember Leopold, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I thought I'd see how putting my hand up and getting your attention works. So, so just to expand off of what Councilmember Turner said, essentially, to make sure I'm understanding this from our city attorney, when there's a lot split, they can build, and this may be from Ms. Perkins as well, but they can put 2 units on the new parcel. They can keep their existing home on the first parcel. They can have a second unit or maybe an ADU on the first parcel. So we could be looking at 4 units, including the original main home on the parcel. That's the first step. I've got that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the second thing is, this is ministerial approval. So site and architecture would never have a say, the council would never have a say for whatever it is that we set as the standard. Right now, we've set the standard as only 800 square foot units for these new split lots for the 2 new units on parcel 2 and the additional unit on parcel 1. But if we were to change this, that means they can build whatever they can shoehorn in under our law. So if we say parcel 2 can have a 2,400 square foot unit, then we would never be able to talk about where it's placed as long as it fits within the envelopes that SB 9 has defined. Is that right?
So we do have objective design standards that were approved by the council in January and would apply to the design of any ministerial reviewed project, including the SB 9 projects. So we do have those standards. And when council approved them in January, we did ask staff to come back in about 6 months to sort of see how they were being implemented and if there's any changes needed. So if we do start to get SB 9 projects, and we can always modify those standards as council sees fit. So those would apply to the SB 9 projects. So that is a criteria that those projects would have to be designed under. But no, you would not be, or the Site and Architectural Commission of the City Council would not be reviewing each individual project that were to be submitted.
Okay.
And
the second,
additionally,
okay, go ahead. Sorry.
additionally, while I think you are correct that a ministerial review process does not allow for a public hearing before the Site and Architecture Commission or the council, there are, as Planner Perkins mentioned, the city has objective standards, and you can craft further objective standards to, encourage people to design things in a way that, respects, say, neighbor privacy. So we have seen regulations passed by other jurisdictions that allow, say, a 2-story house. But if it's within, a certain buffer area or setback, then that limitation under your objective standards drops down to 1 story. So it encourages people to set, homes further back from their neighbors, even if they are pursuing a ministerial approval process. So there are things that the council can pass to, address some of these concerns, besides just limiting square footage. And I think that is one of the reasons why staff are suggesting that, these items be reviewed in light of what other jurisdictions are doing.
All right. And one follow-up question on this. Our initial go slow view of this was to say the split parcel, which I'll refer to as parcel 2 here, can have the 2 units, and no unit can be bigger than 800 square feet on that. Is it conceivable for us to craft that it has 2 units, of which one can be either pursuant to the the logical zoning of the split lot, 2,400 square feet or such, and that the second unit be no larger than 800 square feet? Can we apply that of those 2, they have to be, we can force them to be different? Or if we approve 2,400, does that mean someone could theoretically put 2 2,400s on parcel 2?
So I will say that one approach, in a way of answering your question, one approach that certain jurisdictions have done is that they split basically the allowable square footage between the 2 units. So they'll, if the zoning districts allows a 4,000 square foot house, they say that you can build a 2-unit project that doesn't exceed that 4,000 square feet, however you would like to do it. So if somebody would like a 3,000 square foot and a 1,000 square foot, that's okay. But ultimately, I think that it would be legal for the city to adopt, if the zoning district allows 2,400, require that 1 unit be, not more than 1,000, and then, whatever is the leftover is fine. So I think the council can do something like that. Also, the council should consider whether it makes sense to, apply the underlying zoning district regulations and allow some flexibility as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask?
Councilmember Leto. Yeah, please go ahead.
And the setback, right, for this would be 4 feet. Is that correct? 4 feet setbacks
So yes,
between units, between the house and the fence, correct?
correct. The state law mandates that we allow 4-foot setbacks for the side yards and the rear yard. And we do currently have a requirement that if a structure does not meet the sort of traditional setbacks of the zoning district, and it is within the traditional setback of the zoning district and the 4 feet allowed by SB 9, that the building height is set at 16 feet maximum. So we would only allow a 1-story building in that area.
Thank you.
Any other question? Yeah, Councilmember, please go ahead.
So would it be possible, for example, if a lot that's split and the resulting zoning for that lot allows for, say, a 3,600 square foot home? Is it possible for us to say, well, you have to build an ADU and say that ADU is 800 square feet, and then the difference for that home then would be 2,800 square feet, and you could not max out the total amount of square footage for that lot? And could we stipulate that the second unit be an ADU?
I think that we could set size limits that would effectively require that it be an ADU. So basically, if you set a size limit that's 1,200 square feet or less under state law, that, an ADU cannot be bigger than 1,200 square feet. That is the biggest state law allows cities to set as an ADU limit. So by setting any square footage on the second unit to be less than that, you're effectively requiring them to build an ADU, regardless of what we call it.
Thank you.
Yeah, please go for it. Go for it.
Sorry.
It's complicated subject.
So
Please go ahead.
the size of the ADU, if I had an ADU, for example, that's 800 square feet, right? Can I say that this ADU qualifies as a moderate income ADU? And if it's only 400 square feet, it qualifies as a very low income ADU. Can we do that?
So the income or the affordability requirements for reporting to the state each year for ADUs. The state has recently accepted a proposal that was sent to them where accessory dwelling units can be assumed as 30% of the total as very low income, 30% as low income, 30% as moderate, and 10% as above moderate. So there's just a formula regardless of the size or number of bedrooms of the ADU where we classify them into the affordability categories.
Well, the way you classify them into the affordability category, one thing I'm suggesting is doing it by size. So if we have an ADU that's 400 square feet, which is what you have at the Apple Center, right? 400 square feet, then that qualifies as a very low income ADU. So we meet our numbers. Our affordability rating as well.
So the square footage alone is not a criteria that the state allows to determine the affordability level. We could either do a survey of what actual rents may be being charged for each ADU that was constructed each year, or we can use the set formula. But it's not strictly based on size. There's a sliding scale of affordability based on size of the unit.
But you can argue that typically a smaller unit would be less rent.
Would be less rent, but presumably a 400 square foot unit would be a studio. And that has separate income or separate affordability ranges than a 2-bedroom unit. So it's a sliding scale based on the size of the unit about what qualifies for affordable already.
It sounds like what you said was of the total number of ADUs that we may have, the state would consider such some percentage as very low income anyway, so it doesn't matter what size it is or whatever. And certain number would be low income, so it really doesn't matter. And so-
Under that method, using that
Yeah,
methodology.
so,
yes,
so
it
it really
doesn't
wouldn't
matter.
matter whether you have a small one or big one, as long as you have 100 ADUs, 30 of them would be very low income and so on. All
Exactly.
right.
Are you sure about that? Because at the last RENA cycle, we did not meet our very, very low income ADU.
So this was a methodology that the state Department of Housing and Community Development approved within the last month. So yes, it will apply for the future.
Some progress going on. Yeah, Pro Tem Beckerson, you have a
Yeah.
question?
With respect to the setbacks, there's a 4-foot setback for any ADU and any structure that's built under SB 9. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Wow, regardless of what the setback is on the original lot.
Correct. And that is for the side yard and the rear yard setbacks.
What about for a corner lot?
So a corner lot, the 4-foot setback would apply to the interior side yard
Yes.
and the rear yard.
And what about the exterior side yard?
Would meet our standard zoning setbacks, because that's a side corner.
Oh,
It's not
okay.
a side.
Thank you for clarifying.
So just so that I'm clear, are setbacks different for ADUs as compared to setbacks for regular houses?
Yes, the
They
state
are.
mandates a 4-foot side and rear yard setback for ADUs.
Right, so when we're doing an SB 9 split, we're not building ADUs, we're building actual houses. So do this ADU setbacks will apply to that, or would that be our regular setbacks?
SB 9 projects also are mandated to have a 4-foot side and rear
So
yard
the ADU
setback.
setbacks basically?
But we have a requirement already in our development standards for SB 9 projects that if the setbacks of the zoning district are not met, the building is limited to 16 feet in height, which is the exact height of an ADU, which is functionally a 1-story building.
So there's a height limitation, but the setbacks are the same. SB 9 units have the same setbacks as the ADUs.
That's right.
There's some issue with that, that's okay.
And just to be clear, when we say that a 4-foot setback is what is applicable to ADUs and to SB 9 projects, that is the restriction on what the city can require. Applicants, of course, can choose to put their home further away from the lot line if they so desire. So, and the city can adopt various restrictions and regulations that could encourage people to set it further back, but we can't specifically require that they do so.
Understood. Thank you for clarifying. Are there any other questions? All right, so this is the time we turn it over to our citizens, and welcome all of you here.
So just so you know, we do have a couple hands raised virtually. Do you want to have a preference if you want to let? the
Yeah,
virtual
I have a preference to let the people that are here personally do.
You
Speak
fill out
first.
a card, please.
We have them actually. Would you like me to call them out?
Sure.
Okay, so we have Trevor Schwartz.
Sure,
Would you like-
sure, thank you. Brought a couple slides just to talk a little bit about our property and our thoughts.
Yeah.
What else,
Michelle-
Schwartz?
Michelle will be sharing her
All right.
screen in just a moment.
Thank you,
She's
Michelle.
doing that.
And I'm happy to go over kind of our thoughts and where we're at as a family. I've lived in Los Gatos.
Before you do that, let me also make a disclosure. I met with Mr. and Mrs. Schwartz today, and also with the Hayes earlier on today. Or it was yesterday, I think.
Yesterday, John.
All right.
Thank you. So I'm happy to go over today our thoughts, and where it comes to our property and our family. I've been a resident of Los Gatos for over 20 years now, and Carl Avenue is our third home now here in Monte Sereno. I'm a little torn sitting in the audience and listening to our interpretation of SB 9 and trying to figure out what the government's intention, or excuse me, our governor's intention was. And I just can't help but feel like we're doing everything we can to discourage taking advantage of this opportunity to create more housing within California and our neighborhoods as well. I have a hard time believing that the intention of this was to create small units throughout our neighborhoods and have essentially rentals all over Monte Sereno. I don't believe that that's the intention. And what we're asking today is just to merely adhere to the same design standards that we have on any lot within Monte Sereno. So I bring you to our property here on Carl Avenue. It's a 1 acre lot. And we bought this 3 years ago with the visions of building our dream home. And under current standards, or under the possible standards of SB 9, which would, SB 9 would allow us to split the lot and essentially build our dream home in maybe parcel number 2 or parcel number 1, by still being able to live in the current house and the structure that's there. Unfortunately, under the design standards that are put forward, we wouldn't have that ability. We would be subject to building these 800 square foot lot properties. And in essence, we would have to move out of our house, build an ADU, essentially remodel our house and move back into it. And so there's a lot of different opportunities that our family is facing versus what we would do, but I don't think either way, adding another house or adding a couple other houses is really disruptive to the neighborhood. So we mainly just asking that if we're able to go through with this design, with the split of the lot, is that we just adhere to the same design standards that we would have on any other lot within Monte Sereno, and keeping the integrity of our neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can show the other slide of the. This is looking at the property now. You can see the existing house on the right-hand side. And if we were able to move forward and split the lot, we could build that dream house on lot number 2 while still maintaining our existing house in the front lot. At this point in time, we'd be able to develop another ADU. I mean, essentially, we could add 3 more properties, which would go towards this goal of 19 that we're trying to achieve within Monte Sereno. So.
Thank you.
All right,
Your time
thank
is
you.
up. Is it the time saver? All right, thank you. Yeah, so everybody has about 3 minutes each, right? That's what you're giving them?
I'll have Janet.
I have slides too. They look similar. So my name's Janet Chaffin.
Sorry,
Okay.
my city clerk.
Yeah, I can kind of get things introduced here. My husband Barry and I have lived in Monte Sereno now for 26 years in the same house. And it's at it's on the end of Via Bonita, which if you know the roads of Monte Sereno, Via Bonita is just off Ridgecrest over on the other side of Highway 9. And we've been very happy there, although when we moved into that house 26 years ago, I have to say it should have been torn down years before that. It was built in the, in the mid 1900s and by a fireman in his spare time, and it shows. So anyway, this house needs to be rebuilt. And you can see in the first picture there where the existing home is. It's a 1.5 acre lot. And the existing homes there with the little icon, the "You Are Here" icon is, and there's a little barn off to the side you can see too. So, and you can flip on to the next slide. I'll bring up the next one. Yeah, there we go. And so what we'd like to do with SB 9 is we would like to split that 1.5 acres into 2 parcels and build our dream home. To mirror, what Trevor said. But we don't need anything big. 3,500 square feet is plenty for us, probably more than we need. We would propose to design the second house as well, not to build it, but to have it designed on the split lot. And it would still be under the 7,000 square foot limit, or actually, I think we can go more than that technically within the current guidelines, you know, the zoning restrictions. We would be happy to have both homes reviewed by site and architecture. We've had the same neighbors, many of them we've had for many, many years. We're close to our neighbors and we would want to consult with them in any case. We would also make our homes all electric, so to the earlier presentation. And we would also take extra measures to make sure that we adhere to fire safety. As things stand right now, you can see our little driveway goes way up. There's no way a fire truck would ever get up there into that neighborhood. And we would make it accessible to fire trucks as part of this whole project. But it's going to be very difficult for us, if not impossible, to stay in Monte Sereno if we can't do something like this. And so it would be for the good of everyone and the community and helping us meet our housing goals if we can do something that's more rational. The 800 square foot home, I can't imagine anybody, building 2 of those on a split lot in Monte Sereno. It just isn't economical. So we appreciate your consideration on this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next, Kevin, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, staff. My name is Kevin Hayes, 15187 Carl Avenue. Lived there with my family since 1996, having spent 7 more years in Las Gatas. Family have all left us now. We got 1 cat left, and myself and my wife had 3 cats, but they've met their deaths on Carl Avenue at various times. Our property on the right-hand side of that drawing there, we're there in 4,000 square feet. We enlarged it in about the year 2000 from 3,000 to 1,000 to 4,000 square feet, put in an extra 1,000, 1,100 square feet into it. The left-hand side, parcel number 2, currently contains in the, if you like, the northwest corner there, a dilapidated stables. The previous owners had a couple of horses, and then in the area immediately below that, there was an unused riding area. When we got there first, there were jumps and everything else like that, but we weren't interested in that, and our kids didn't. So we had been planning to do an ADU until SB9 came along. Whatever happens here, whatever happens in the immediate future, we will hold out to build an SB9 type project rather than ADU. ADU was a sort of a compromise. We really didn't want it. The house is too big for us. We like to live, and we like to travel, and we like to have a small house. We propose in parcel 2 to build something in the region of 2,500 to 3,000 square feet. That's plus minus. It might be a little bit less than that. And we think that's a great use of the site as than it is right now. It's essentially a sort of a wasted site. The riding arena takes up a good chunk of the property. The property is almost square. It's 246 by 238 feet. So we have a lot of frontage. We could easily, on in the northeast corner there, we have a gateway already, and it's easy to access it and move in there. A couple of you, the mayor and Ms. Lawler, saw it yesterday, and I think appreciate what's involved in it. Maybe you could put up the other slide now, please, just to get a better sense of it graphically. You can see on the left that kind of that gray area. That's the riding area. It was an infill. I think the person before us filled it in over time and built it up for the riding arena. Top left-hand corner, northwest corner, is the dilapidated barn that's falling down, and then the existing house. So we would sort of propose to sell the existing house, and the property line is basically the old horse fences along there. That's why it takes that sort of zigzag there. Essentially, that's it. Thank you very much for your consideration. We think it's a good move if you do something different to the 800 square foot things, which is a non-runner. Nobody's going to do it.
Thank you.
We have Bruce Norman.
Sure. I'm gonna let Mr. go first.
I'm sorry,
Justin.
Justin.
Good evening. Thank you for the time to speak tonight. I have lived in Monte Sereno for more than 20 years since I was a kid. I grew up here. I went to Saratoga High School. I went to Redwood Middle School. I played water polo at West Valley College. So I've lived here all my life. And so me and my wife got married 2 years ago during COVID at my parents' house. So at 15950 Ramita Court, that's where we got married. And we live today in a small ADU guest house that was built about 30 years before Monte Sereno was even incorporated. So it's a very, very, very old house. It's very small. And so we've been working at home for the last 2 years during COVID in a house that's about 800 square feet already. We would love to stay in Monte Sereno. I grew up here and I would love to have a family here, and given our work situation and given the size of our house, we don't have the ability to have a family here, given the way that we would split the property. We can't get a loan unless we do the lot split. And to have 800 square feet to figure out how to live in 2 different houses and still live in Monte Sereno wouldn't make sense for our family. So we would really like it if we can find a way to have a little bit bigger house. And that's a big lot. That lot there is 2.7 acres, and given the slope, and those are 2 different streets. So this house is a different house on a different street already. And all we're asking is to split the property and give us a little bit more leeway to build out a house that we could actually live in and have a family in. We don't want a giant house. I mean, if we could get 2,000 square feet, for us, that would be enough, right? I mean, we just want a tiny house we can live in. Everything there is already built in. It's got sewer, power. I mean, it's a different house on a different street. The only reason we couldn't split the lot today under the current regulations is because the slope on the lot gives us like 0.9 acres instead of the 1 acre we would need. So this would really help out our family and allow us to kind of stay in the area, which we'd love to do. Thank you. Thank you.
Is there a preference with Diane or Bruce?
So as my son said, the house is actually on a different street that you have to go all the way down. If you're familiar with the area, we're on Ramita Court. You have to go all the way down Matilaha onto Highway 9 and back up Blytheswood to get to this guest house. So it's quite a drive to get there. And it's almost 100 years old and in dire need of work. And the work would be quite expensive. That for us to do doesn't make sense because it doesn't add value to our property unless we can divide it and they can live there. Otherwise, if we did that work, they would never have that house of theirs, would be either have to live there or never die because you know, they wouldn't have a place that was theirs. So we love having them close by. We love having our family close by. The houses on Blytheswood are all very large homes. And as you can see where we are, we're quite far, quite a lot of property in between. And they're not asking for much, but they are asking for a house that they could actually have a family in. Right now, it's not doable. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Just a few words. Bruce Lerman, give you a little detail. I was really glad to see that you guys are discussing the possibility of making amendments to your previous decision to go at 800 square feet. I think you really need to take a look at each individual homeowner and see who they are. In our situation, that house is not part of our house already. And we should have been able to subdivide it a long time ago, but due to the slope restrictions, we weren't able to. So we're probably not unlike a lot of homeowners in the state. I mean, our situation is crazy. We can't barely use the house unless we drive down there. My father was going to be down living in that one time. He couldn't even walk up to our main house. He had to live with us in the main house. That house was kept vacant during that period. But to make a long story short, I just want to say, I'm recommending that you review your decision
take everybody's house as their situation, as an individual situation, because everybody's different. And to restrict it to 800 is gonna, for us, it makes it impractical. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Assume there's 1%. Yes.
He hadn't given me his card.
Welcome, Mr. James.
Hello there, thank you. Okay, so what I want to talk about are a few things that I think I would love to see you recommend to staff. Staff has to go back and think, but it's what they think about is what you tell them to think about. So I put a few things down here. I said the rules should not discourage owners from applying for a lot split. That's one, the moment they do. They should provide as much synergy with the existing process as possible. Don't make two separate processes, an SB9 process and another process. Try and make them similar. The objective design standard should be used to restrict issues that you don't want, privacy, things like that. The site and architecture process must be allowed for SB9 lots after the lot has been split. All the other jurisdictions do it. I don't know where your attorney is coming from on that one. I totally disagree with it. All the other jurisdictions, Saratoga, Los Gatos, allow it. It would enable you to do a nice design if the design standards don't work for you. And it also helps with the housing element. Could I do the next slide? I'm going to give you an example of some things, and I added a couple of things to what I sent out in the packet. Firstly, you should get rid of the lot coverage issue. The deviation that you've added there is not necessary, and I'll talk about that one-on-one if you want. Residential 2-unit developments. This is an example. You could allow one house to be sized based on the FAR. So whatever the zone allows, you allow it. It'll be smaller than normal because of the lot split. So if you take an acre lot and go to half an acre lot, you get a smaller house. Allow the second house to be the size of the ADU for that comparable lot split. Don't differentiate. So 1,200, 1,000, 850, whatever it is. Now, you should then apply restrictions. Here are some restrictions. I would suggest you consider ministerial process, single story only. That's going to upset a lot of people, but it gives you control. They can't deal with the privacy issue. Require the ADU size to be built as well as the main house. That gets you your affordable units. So if you want to build a house, you've got to build an ADU. If you want to add on to a house, that wouldn't count. But if you were building a new house, you build an ADU. A micro lot, you've got to talk about separately. You've got to come up with rules for what happens if you split something down to 5,000 feet, set of rules for that. Diana can come up with that. What I added that I hadn't thought of before, this is how to come up with something that I think is very useful, using a carrot rather than a stick. Size of homes. Use the standard zoning FARs, 3,000, 4,500, and 6,000 for all proposed homes.
Hello. Yeah, I'll have to cut you off. We're out of time.
Could you ask me a question so I can finish this sentence?
Yeah, what are you trying to get to?
I'm trying to say that one of the things that you could do, you're worried about setbacks, 4 feet, keeps coming up. Okay, there's a 10% bonus that you allow for a 2-story building. Give them that 10% bonus if they stay with the regular setbacks for the zoning district. So if you want 3,000, you can go up to the fence. But if you want 3,300, then stay with the setbacks for the zoning district. Get away from the property lines. That's the way to use the carrot and stick the right way. And I think it'll help.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Anybody else from the audience here? We can go to online. There's some people online who have some questions. Please go ahead.
Yes, we have
Okay.
Eric.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and call them.
Hi, can you hear me, Council?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Eric Ramakrishnan, and I'm an attorney with Berliner Cohn. My firm represents several of the people you've heard speak tonight who want to take advantage of SB 9 but cannot under the city's current rules. For reasons explained in our letter that is attached to the staff report, we believe that the city's current ordinance is illegal. The staff report attaches a fact sheet from HCD, which explains an additional reason why the city's ordinance violates state law that is not already addressed in our letter. What the fact sheet explains is that SB 330 prohibits a local agency from reducing the development intensity of residentially zoned properties. The city's 800 square foot size limitation on units created under SB 9 reduces development intensity on a site as soon as the property owner opts to take advantage of SB 9. According to HCD, this practice is illegal. In line with what some council members have suggested and what we just heard Tony suggest, the ordinance should allow property owners who use SB 9 to take advantage of the existing full development potential of their lots. For example, if the applicant otherwise could construct more than 8,000 square feet under applicable zoning on a 1 acre site, inclusive of ADU and JADU, the applicant should be allowed to build at least as much total under SB 9. A second concern that I have with the city's ordinance is that the city should allow property owners to seek discretionary approval of dwelling units on lots created through urban lot splits under SB 9. Some of our clients would like to pursue this option, but the city's ordinance does not allow it, even though the ordinances of neighboring jurisdictions do. I agree that the city cannot require property owners to take advantage of discretionary processes on lots created under SB 9 urban lot splits, but there is no reason in the law not to allow it as an option. SB 9 enacted two separate statutes. One provides for ministerial approval of units, and the other provides for the urban lot split. Both statutes function independently, and Section 65852.21F of the Government Code is explicit that a property owner is not required to take advantage of both. In summary, I'm asking the City Council to consider two things. One is to eliminate the 800 square foot size limitation, providing an ordinance that more closely resembles your conventional zoning rules in line with what HCD has opined is required. And number two, that the city allow property owners who process urban lot splits under SB 9 to choose to apply for discretionary site development approvals. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else online?
We have someone by the name of Lenny Key.
Go ahead, Mr. Limmy. Yeah, please go ahead.
Lamin, you're on mute, so we're not able to hear you.
You need to unmute first.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't intended to speak. Sorry.
Go ahead.
He said he didn't plan on speaking, so we can move on to the next speaker, which is Lon Allen.
Mr. Allen, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mary and I have lived in the same house here in Monte Sereno for 43 years. I have just two comments I'd like to make. The first is, I'm very sure we're not 19 units short of RENA. Monte Sereno is over 60 years old. And in early years, when someone got a building permit for a pool house, it was just a pool house and no one thought to look to see if it would qualify today as an ADU. And I would encourage the city to go back over the last 60 years and look at all the pool houses that were permitted as pool houses that the owners probably don't even think about as ADUs, because I'm very confident that they would qualify as ADUs. So that's my first comment. My second comment, the mayor started the council meeting talking about Arbor Day and all the wonderful trees we have here in Monte Sereno. Well, again, having lived here 43 years, I remember in the major fire of 1985, when things got down to Broadway and Los Gatos, and we were using hoses to water the roof of our homes. Today, with 1,245 households in Monte Sereno, if we had a major fire, and we all know that in recent years, fire is becoming more and more a danger for all of us in California, we would have trouble evacuating our 1,245 households because all we have is Winchester and Highway 9. And with the eucalyptus trees growing in the middle of Highway 9, if there's a fire, I very much fear that Highway 9 may not be accessible. So it seems to me that the council has a balancing act to do. We all understand the housing needs in California, and and we have to comply with the requirements of SB 9. But the reality is, if we materially increase the number of households from 1,245, even by a couple of hundred, much less, I'm sure HUD would like all municipalities to double the number of households. We don't need just to provide housing, we need to provide safe housing. And if anybody, I don't think anybody thinks we're not going to have more and more major fires in this area. So I would just encourage the council to balance the need for housing with the need for safe housing for the current residents and new residents. And it's a tough job, and I'm very glad I'm no longer on the city council. So good luck to you all.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. Anybody else online?
Yes, we have Allison Zindler.
Yeah, Allison, please go ahead.
Hello. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so SB 9 contemplates 4 homes where there was 1 before. So potentially 4 households where you had 1 household before. We live in the wildland urban interface area here. We have severe fire danger, and multiplying by as many as 4 times the number of people living here will increase the risk due to human ignition of wildfires. And the wildfires that do occur will pose a greater risk to human lives and property. So the more homes we shoehorn in here are just more homes to ultimately burn. I think we all remember the orange sky while the CZU complex raged. We know that the fires will continue. So we already comply with SB 9, but making our ordinance even more attractive and trying to multiply further the number of people that take that route means we will have more people in unsafe conditions. We live on essentially a dead-end street. And so we have one way out that goes on to Saratoga, Los Gatos Saratoga Road. Los Gatos is building more homes. Saratoga is building more homes. So we're essentially hemmed in by all this increased development. And the more discretion the city retains and the more homes that are evaluated through discretionary processes, the better we can develop in a safe manner. And also to the fire issue, you know, we've had a lot of neighbors lose their fire insurance coverage. And so, you know, if you look, there's chatter on Nextdoor. So we have to keep that in mind. The insurers are saying, don't pack more people in. And we need to be very mindful about how we add that additional housing and not just put 4 homes where there was 1 before. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else online?
Yes, we have Pam Sherman.
Here. Please go ahead, Pam. What's the last name?
Sherman?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, this isn't really Pam Sheridan, that's my wife. I logged in with her computer. I just wanted to say, I am not planning to use SB 9. I don't have any project in mind, but I've been listening to all these comments, and I live on Greenwood Lane. I'm an interested party. I think that really it's been said several times tonight, but I think the whole thing about this 800 square feet, one size fits all. It's just not practical. I mean, you know, property in Monte Sereno, it's prime real estate. Who's going to buy a subdivided lot if all they can do is put 1 or 2 800 square foot Lego bricks on it? I mean, you need to have a subdivided lot that allows for a main house. And I would suggest, and I think the conversation was headed this way, that you have some ruling that it's not just 800 square feet, but something that's commensurate with the area of the subdivided lot, some kind of, and should also be arbitrated just like as a normal project. You know, someone said it shouldn't be any different, and I agree with that. So anyhow, I think you're headed that way, though. I think you ought to be able to build a proper home on a subdivided lot, 2,500 square feet, whatever that is, commensurate with the size of the lot. And one last thing, there was talk about these things getting approved ministerially. I'm really against that. I don't know whether the city's trying to cut down on their work, I don't know, but I definitely feel that every project should go through site and architecture. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, we have Aiden Zhang.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Go ahead, Mr. Zhang.
Mr. Zhang, you're on mute.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So my name is Johnny Zhang. So I'm also the citizen of Monte Sereno. I just want to share some point of view from myself. So let's back up for a little bit seconds. We hear the concern about neighbors about fires. Actually, let's think about the other way. If we put this 800 square footage and allow people to build actually a higher density, smaller house, will this help the fire hazards? I don't think so, because actually, as they state, the Monte Sereno lot is very expensive. Who is going to actually do the lot split and build a small house? Actually, people's plan is split the lot and use the vacant lot to build attractive house. And this is going to actually help people, for the folks who was living there for many years, maybe economically doesn't have the sufficient fund to repair their house or build a new house. So if we allow people to build a reasonable, attractive house by the urban split lot, people will be able to build more attractive property in Monte Sereno, which is going to actually help the neighborhood. And we are not going to leave the vacant lot unhandled. You know, this vacant lot there, they are going to have the weed grow like a tree not managed. This actually is going to increase the fire hazard. That's the first point I have. The second point I have is, if we can allow the SB9 urban lot split and allow people to actually build house, this will actually brought reasonable, decent young family into the community. Think about the Cupertino, which is basically price out the family move in, and they actually do not have new students enroll into all elementary. They have to shut down several elementary and middle school last year because there's no new student. So think about Davis Avenue Elementary we have down the street, right? So if we do not have new blood into the community, we will not be able to make our community sustainable, right? So that's my 2 point of view. And the third one is a little bit overlap with the first one is think about all those examples which has been brought up by the other neighborhoods for they wanted to split their urban lot. So actually their lot is vacant. It's not properly managed and used. Those landscape is, I don't think this vacant lot actually making the landscape better. If we split and build a reasonable house, it's going to actually make the community better in a way that which can also accommodate the existing property.
Thank you,
That's all
Mr. Dana. Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Anyone else online?
There are no other hands up, Mayor.
Thank you. I'm going to bring it back to council for our discussion and comments. And give some directions or to staff after that. So who wants to go first?
Yes, this is a question based on the comments from the public. There seems to be, I have a misunderstanding, let's put it that way. If we have something that allows a lot split under SB 9, must it be ministerial approval or can there be some discretion? That's the first question under the lot split. The second question is for the structure that's going to be built on either of the lots, does it have to follow ministerial approval for that, or can it go through a discretionary approval process?
It's a question for Attorney Rudin, I believe.
Yes.
So the SB 9 statute, or the SB 9 created two statutes. One, which requires ministerial lot splits of every single family zoned lot. So that cannot be a discretionary process, and it cannot involve any sort of public hearing before a public hearing body. Now, in terms of what can be built on the lot split, that law expressly states that the city can impose objective standards. Additionally, SB 330 prohibits any imposition of any new subjective standards, period. So basically, the city can impose objective restrictions on what can be built on those lot splits as a condition of approval, and can also impose subdivision regulations, zoning regulations, design requirements on lot split lots. Once those lots are split, as folks have pointed out, there are jurisdictions that allow the option of discretionary approvals with respect to single family homes if they have existing discretionary approval processes. However, the city cannot mandate that someone make use of that because the other portion of SB 9 enacted a statute that requires that the city ministerially process qualifying applications of up to 2 units. So if someone wants to make use of that non-discretionary ministerial process for a single family home, they are entitled to do so as long as the project meets the objective requirements the city has enacted for those classes of projects using the ministerial process. Now, realistically, if the city makes it so that the requirements are effectively the same, and for any project that someone applies for under SB 9, the likelihood that people elect to use a discretionary process versus a non-discretionary process will likely go down. That may not necessarily be a bad thing in and of itself, but that may be a consequence of whatever regulations the council decides to adopt with respect to SB 9 projects.
So you kind of answered my follow-on question, which is, if I could go through a ministerial approval process, why would I ever consider a discretionary process to go through with site and architecture? And would site and architecture allow the interpretation of the quote dimensions of the lot split, or not of the structure? Could they allow variances in that where the ministerial approval could not? Like, help me understand why I would ever go outside of ministerial approval.
So variances would be one circumstance, certainly. Now, for example, for those jurisdictions that have interpreted SB 9 as allowing for one to pursue a discretionary approval, if they have, say, for example, a 1-story limit, but your discretionary approval process provides for a 2-story limit in certain circumstances, that would be an encouragement to, say, go to your discretionary approval process. Now, with respect, and similarly, you know, if you have some sort of other relatively restrictive design standard, or you don't allow certain things like, say, covered porches, but somebody would very much like a covered porch that's of a certain size, you know, that could be possibly obtained under a discretionary review process if it's allowed under the code. So there are ways you could encourage people to make use of the discretionary review process, but again, I don't think you can mandate it under SB 9 for a project that meets whatever objective standards you have enacted for SB 9 projects.
Okay, could we marry the discretionary for going beyond 800 square feet, but ministerial approval must be granted for 800 square feet?
I think you probably could do that. Whether you would like to is another question, obviously.
Help me understand the pros and cons.
I think realistically, if one of the concerns of the council are the concerns about the complaints to HCD and the arguments that have been raised, I think that having a process that only allows for ministerial approval of an 800 square foot limit would not eliminate those concerns. Additionally, we don't actually know what the Department of Justice's position is on that. HCD has put out their opinion piece, but I don't think it was particularly well thought through, particularly the arguments with respect to reduction in density, since the statute that they're relying on is discussing reduction in density compared to what it might be allowed under the law as it stood in 2018. And additionally, you know, nobody who is applying for an SB 9 project is being denied the opportunity to build whatever is actually allowed under the discretionary process under the city's zoning code without, you know, doing a lot split or making use of the other SB 9 statutes. So they are still entitled to build whatever they would like to build if SB 9 had never existed. So I think that argument is not particularly well thought through or reasoned. But, you know, with respect to the idea that the city should not be imposing, you know, the bare minimum that it is entitled to impose under SB 9, you know, I think the city may still face some challenges on policy grounds. Additionally, if the city does have a ministerial process with respect to 800 square feet, you know, as you might hear during the next agenda item, HCD has not allowed jurisdictions to make significantly large assumptions about how much housing is going to be generated on SB 9 without some sort of proof of owner interest. And so without some additional owner interest, which would be generated under a higher ministerial approval standard, I think the city may still have difficulty arguing to HCD that it's going to meet its RENR allocation. So those are some things that might be considered by the council.
Anything else?
No, that's, thank you, Attorney Rudin.
Yeah, let me go to Councilmember Lutol. He has had his hand up for a while. Please go ahead, Sean.
Thank you. All right, I apologize. I've got a lot to say, and I'm going to talk about the philosophical issues here because I see kind of staff trying to solve a problem that was created for us by the governor a few months ago and is in flux and no one quite understands. And I think our initial go slow approach is the right approach. I think it's still the right approach, and I'll tell you why. First of all, the Lehrmans said we should look at each individual homeowner's situation. We should look at each individual lot. We would love to, but that's what we cannot do. This is ministerial. It's got to apply to every single lot in the city exactly the same way. So sorry, but that's our problem. We can't look individually. We can't talk about the exceptions versus the rules. We have to have a set of rules that's going to apply completely across the board. There was a comment about fairness and equity. And that leads into something which I think is critically important here. Every single one of us moved, and I'm talking about the residents here, moved to Monte Sereno because we want to live in this Monte Sereno that existed prior to 4 months ago. It's rural. It has a unique character. That's what we city council members have been dedicated to maintain. And 4 months ago, the governor passed and the government passed this law that would create what might be seen by some as a huge windfall by allowing lots to be split. We're talking about splitting a 1 acre lot into 2 parcels. And there were comments about, well, this will make it more affordable and more people can move to our neighborhood and that'll be great. You divide a 1 acre lot into 2 parcels, you've now taken something that was worth $6 million for that home and its ADU, and you've now got 2 $5 million homes plus their ADUs, or maybe even more the way you split it up. We're not fixing the affordability problem. What we're doing is we're creating a huge windfall to people who have a unique ability to split their lots, and that is not fairness and equity. Fairness and equity is saying, not like Mr. Jean said, fairness and equity, if we're going to apply this, let those people with the 8,000 square foot lots divided into 4,000 square foot lots and put up 4 units. That's what our state wants us to do. And that's fairness and equity and treating all citizens of this city the same. So let's not pick the obvious lots where we have wonderful homeowners who have a beautiful opportunity. And I believe every one of them when they say they're going to build their dream home on it. Except I've been on the council long enough to know that 8 out of 10 people who tell us they're going to build their dream home, develop it and sell it. So nothing against these homeowners. I think they have unique lots and they're saying things that I wish I could give them, because it would make perfect sense to split their lots. But we zoned this city and we bought the zoning we have, and I don't think we get to go and cherry pick. We have to apply with fairness and equity under this, which means we need a rule that applies equally to every single person in our city. And with that in mind, I say we have to go very, very slowly, learn from the neighboring cities. One final comment, and that is San Jose, with millions of people and thousands of property, has not seen SB 9 applications. We've got half a dozen residents who have unique properties that would love to take advantage of this opportunity. But we're not here to help out the half a dozen of our wonderful neighbors who have great lots that I wish we could split. We're here to pass something that is for every citizen equally. So I think we need to go slow, learn from the experiences of the other cities, learn what the legal challenges bring them, and then make the right decisions for our city. So those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Turner?
Yeah, I wanted to expand on what Councilmember Leopold said about, and I need your input on this one in terms of developing and then selling, right? So the question is, I know being involved in the different groups with SB 9 and SB 10 coming up when they were being formed, the most difficult part of this would be to monitor a resident or a developer on a house, right? So I develop a property and I have to live there in that property. So how do we maintain that rule? How do we make sure that people don't come in, sell it, right? And still maintain the characteristics of Monte Sereno.
So the SB 9 urban lot split does require the current property owner, pre-split, to live in one of the properties for 3 years. And so under our current process, we would have the property owner sign an affidavit attesting that they would do that. Again, we don't have any applications. We certainly wouldn't have any projects completed by now, even if we did. But I would presume that code enforcement would be as we enforce other code violations currently.
I think we need to look at that because there's probably a loophole in that in terms of the developer saying, I will stay here, and then later on they go out and sell it. And I want to make sure that if we're going to do this, that we do this right. And it doesn't have anything to do with whether we want people to build or not build. We just want to put integrity and transparency into our processes.
Anything else? Any other comments, discussions? Yeah, this is indeed a complicated process. I mean, there are people who need to, be able to split the lot and make it more useful than it is right now. We're also trying to maintain a rule that is easy to follow and is a ministerial rule. One question, I don't know if Attorney Rudin, if you can answer it with a yes or no, that Mayor Pro Tem Makachek was trying to, it's probably asked you, and so just limiting your answer to that, and I hate to do that to you since you're an attorney and you get it to do it to other people. But the question basically is, can we set a limit, let's say 800 square foot, but then also provide that whoever is doing the split, they can either choose to get it ministerially approved, or they can go to site and architecture with some other plan. Can our ordinance say that?
I think the answer is yes. I think that also poses some other risks, which I will separately email the council about.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. So we have a whole discussion on ABAG also going through, and we can do one of two things. We could do one of two things, and I'll get to you after that. We could either go ahead and try to give some directions to staff now on what to do with this process, which is either send it to site and architecture or decide ourselves what we want to do with it. Or we can go look at the next agenda item, which is the ABAG thing, and see how serious that issue is with respect to us needing the extra 19 houses. Former Mayor Pro Tem Lon Ellen brought up a good point saying, look at the pool houses to see if they're satisfied, and that might you may have already looked at it, or that may be something for you to consider. So what I'm going to ask you guys on City Council is, do you want to kind of change the agenda so that we can look at the ABAC, which is the next item of the agenda first, and then come back to this particular thing, or do you want to give a direction at this time?
I think that makes sense. I mean, we need to look at the whole picture.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a very complicated issue, and the way we set it up was to give us as much room as possible to learn and to do this thoughtfully. So in that vein, we should be very thoughtful about how we pursue anything with respect to this ordinance.
I also have a lot of questions with respect to the number of units that we have come up with, 174, and we have 19 left, or whatever that is. I just don't understand how, based on what you have there, how you were able to achieve 174, how you can go to HCD with our numbers with question marks in it, because they will not accept that, right? We have to fill in everything before we can get them to approve our numbers. But we do have time. We still have time to do this, so we don't have to hurry. But I want to make sure that our numbers are correct, because when I look at the numbers there, you say 174, and I'm looking at 88 units. So we need, I need some clarification on what how we do that. I have a whole bunch of questions.
Should we go to the next agenda item?
Yeah, I
come
think
back
so.
to this. Councilmember Luther, are you comfortable with that?
Yes, I think that's fine. And I think we may ultimately be wanting to bring I'm fine with us doing that, but then we may want to bring back the SB 9 after we've had a chance to review more of the legal review with our counsel, and also maybe some more in-depth review and spend more time, more weeks on this as we learn what other cities are doing and what their experiences are under this. So we may want to bring this back, not just after we look at our housing element, but after housing element moves forward further in the process and we learn more from other cities. So certainly we can talk more today, but I may be moving that we push this out for further discussion.
So we're good. That's going to be one of our discussion items. Did you want to say anything at this time?
Sure. I want to thank all the people that came here tonight, and I want to underscore what Councilmember Leuthold said, that if we could solve each one of these problems, we would love to do so. But until we can really understand what the legal implications are, I don't think we can make a decision tonight, and it makes good sense to combine it with the next agenda item. So I would agree with that, but I do thank everyone, and I appreciate and understand your circumstances. And if there was a way we could solve all these problems or all these opportunities, that would be fabulous. But
yeah, so that's not designed to say you can leave now or you guys can stay along. What the only thing we're doing now, these two things are kind of intertwined. The ABAG numbers require us to do something so that we can comply with the state requirements. The SB 9, we thought we solved it the way we did, but hearing all of you, it seems like we need to act, we need to do something different maybe. And then the process is, what is it different that we need to do? Or maybe we don't need to do anything different if our council says, no, stick with this and there's no other easier way. But then our planning staff and all that will, they may be able to come up with something else. So you're welcome to hang around. We'll discuss the next agenda item and then we'll come back to this one. All right. So the next agenda item basically has to do with our ABAGs. It's
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, sorry.
I was going to suggest, suggest for the public, if we want to give a stretch break.
Okay.
5 minutes.
Sounds great.
9:15.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. 5-minute break. We'll be back at 9:20.
We return back to the room, and we get a chance to speak. Yes, we'll be certain for our-
You need to say.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to fill out another card, we can fill out another card, we can talk again. That's what he said. Yeah. Oh, sure.
style, yeah.
One person, yeah, the other side, no, yeah, that's. That's why.
I know. I know.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like. You're talking like there's a million people and there are.
They're gonna have the whole down and down, right? And I understand that what the there are. That's all we're out. But it's.
Yeah.
I was thinking of bigger for you.
Oh. That's all the draw.
It's kind of like you're in the middle of this zone.
We already do. We already do that.
But you know,
I know, right?
Yeah.
Right.
One person on.
Yes.
So the cycles are going back and forth, but there's a lingerie site versus the front of this.
But if it is that.
No, but when we see they come out here.
In the right direction.
Yeah, the only entrance. We put in a tree behind. The oleander in the front is all gone.
Sure.
Ultimately. Doesn't need a plan.
Yeah, I know we had a discussion. Try to do it before I said we should.
So are you still working, is your daughter still working with you?
Yes.
Lovely girl. Lovely. This is the first time I had a chance to, officially looking at it.
Across the street and two
Her and your
of them
son.
went for
Yeah, it's really nice.
One word.
I think, Liz Turner's. in there. Oh, no, sorry. Yeah.
I have been.
The interpretation of the law is different with his attorney than it is.
There's lots of money chasing.
Yeah.
Not very much.
May have to be a case.
We don't want to do all this and that is, we're just kidding.
That's true, that's true.
We're on a 7:30.
We'll see what's happening, but that may have to.
What?
Yeah. She loves it, absolutely loves it. Oh, God. I was thinking this afternoon at 3 o'clock. No, I'm feeling fine, but it's just, you know.
Hi.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Pleasure. We've seen you over Zoom, over all the city.
Oh, you're much better looking in person.
In the wood.
In the wood, okay.
Yeah, so there's the exterior materials
Yeah,
of the building,
I know.
the windows. Yeah,
I know it's hard, I know it's really hard.
Which can be composition with the plywood and solid.
Right.
We don't want to make
Um,
mistakes.
Right, no, and I know, and I was just saying that our attorney is interpreting things different than your attorney. So,
Right. From the areas.
I agree with Penny.
And then
The
there's
windows
landscaping.
have to be all the different
tempered or
city council members.
yeah.
So there's a specific building codes for that.
Yes.
And then what about landscape?
And
The landscape actually interesting. We got an email last week from, so that's managed by San Antonio County Fire.
Yeah, so yes, our attorney is not
So we do
interpreting
the
things the
construction
same
side of
way.
it. the ongoing part.
Yeah,
of
and they
the
did
city.
the montage, okay.
And they don't do information.
Right.
So they had just emailed us, so there's a new person kind of spearheading that program now. So. She reached out and see if we could-
Doubles the capacity. It only took 3 days for me to do it.
We've lost our sound. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but Mr. Allen reports losing his audio, and I don't have audio from the council chambers, although I had it till a moment ago.
I think Council Chambers is on mute.
As they should have been before.
I just asked Boise to unmute it.
All right, thanks.
Not yet?
Here's just a moment. Here we go.
Justin, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Thank you. Yeah, we need to move along. Our deputy city clerk has to get home. She's got a couple of small ones.
It's okay.
So let's keep that in mind. I know this is a very complex subject. So what we're going on to is the next agenda item, which is to accept the housing element update on site inventory, and there's a discussion on the community workshop on the housing element. Staff is recommending that the city council receive the housing element update and provide some feedback. So this is a good way to discuss it, because part of this whole process, trying to figure out what to do with the SB 9 issue, is to figure out what exactly our numbers look like, and whether we need to do something to make sure we meet those requirements. So staff report, please.
Yes, thank you. Here tonight with us is Lauren Herr and Andy Flower from EMC Planning Group, who are our consultants helping us prepare the housing element update. And they will provide an overview of sort of the first draft of the site's inventory, and go over just an outline of what is scheduled for the community workshop on Saturday. And I will turn things over to Lauren for her presentation.
Go ahead, Laura.
Yes, sorry, I just was promoted to a panelist, so just rejoining now. Thank you all for your time. I will go ahead and share my screen. So today's agenda is just going to provide a brief overview of what we'll be discussing in the workshop this Saturday from 2 to 4. It is virtual. And then we'll have plenty of time for council feedback and questions. And just wanted to promote our dedicated housing element website. It is www.athomeinmontesereno.com, and that is where you can find information about our workshop this Saturday and how to join, as well as an overview of the housing element, FAQs, and key documents. So as far as our timeline, we have been doing robust analysis and review of the previous housing element. We are working on our draft sites inventory, which we will be unveiling during the workshop. And this will follow closely into the policy development stage as we hear back from the council and the public on the draft sites inventory. And once those balls are rolling, we'll be able to we're already drafting the housing element, like, just the framework. And so we'll be able to plug things in and go along with our draft and go through the rest of the process to eventually be certified by HCD in January. So this is a quick summary of Monte Sereno's RHNA, which stands for Regional Housing Needs Allocation. This was assigned to us by the state. And you can see that Monte Sereno has to plan for 193 housing units within the 2023 to 2031 planning period. The highest proportion of this 193 is in the above moderate income level, and the second highest proportion of units is within the very low income level. And overall, a sites inventory is just one important part of the process that we're going through and the final policy document. And it is a specific list of sites that demonstrates to HCD, the state, where and how Monte Sereno is planning to accommodate the 193 units within our planning period. Some potential strategies that we are considering for Monte Sereno is to rezone 9 sites along Vineland Avenue from R144 to R18, which would allow us to reduce these lot sizes from 1 acre to a 5th acre, and therefore allow for more housing units. Our second strategy that we're looking into is requiring all new single-family homes that are built to include at least 1 ADU, and this will help meet our affordability goals. And it's important to note, as mentioned earlier, that even with these 2 robust strategies, this would still leave us at a deficit and only 90% of the required 193 units. And as we look into what sites are reasonable, obviously there are many factors to consider, but 3 that we want to highlight today are the clarity and predictability of permitting, which we can look into as we consider policy options, the community support. So during this workshop, we'll talk about how the community can provide feedback on these sites, which will then in turn help influence, which sites we're going to move forward with. And then the owner interest to develop. I'll talk about this in a little bit, but this is also a key factor. So SB 9 has been discussed at length today. It's been really great to hear this discussion and everyone's point of view. So I won't go into the details of the slide since we're all familiar. And part of what we'll be unveiling at the workshop is not only a discussion of the sites we're looking at, but ways to provide feedback. This includes online site surveys, 1 for each site, as well as surveys for SB 9 and ADUs. Then we have the property owner interest form, which is also very important for SB 9 and to have units counted towards that, or SB 9 units counted towards the RHNA. And then just in general, the At Home in Monte Sereno website has other ways that people can provide comments, suggestions, and questions. And a little bit more detail about the property owner interest form. Here is a QR code. It is also linked on our At Home in Monte Sereno website. But this is a key way that we can help make sure we achieve the RHNA. And having this dedicated property owner interest form filled out is really important to HCD taking whatever number of units we are asking to be considered for SB 9 towards RHNA. The HCD will really take these property owner interest forms a long way in terms of seeing that Monte Sereno is serious about their intent for property owners to build these homes. And this Saturday again is our housing element community workshop. It's from 2 to 4. And the Zoom information on how to join is on our website. And that was just a quick overview of everything because we wanted to leave plenty of time for council discussion and feedback. And we look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you. Councilor Turner.
What?
You have questions. This is the time.
Oh. Are we not going through the map, the presentation, the map? No?
We, Andy, you can chime in here too, but we wanted to also make sure that it's in our workshop as well, but we can, Andy, what are your?
Okay, so you want me to go ahead and answer?
Yeah,
Okay.
please go.
So the report that you have said that you have identified 174 units out of the required 194, not 193, I'm sorry. It looks like Vineland, Carl, Palos Verdes areas have 88 units from the way I counted it. So where's the error?
Yeah, I just wanted to check, is Andy, oh, there, okay, yeah. Andy will help answer some of the questions here.
Could you repeat the question, please? I'm not
Okay.
sure if I understood. You asked where is the error?
Yeah, I count 88 units, right? And you say you have 174 of the required 193 units. So I'm not sure how you got 174 based on what you were showing us in that slide where you had Carl Avenue, Palos Verdes, and Vineland.
We will be going into much more detail when we have the workshop this Saturday.
Okay.
Well,
I think I know the answer to your question. You didn't count up you're not, that number, the 88 is only for ADUs. That doesn't include all of the housing that they counted for those lots, which comes to 86.
Okay.
So 86 plus 88 comes to that 174.
Maybe Ms. Perkins can also answer that question.
Yes, thank you. Exactly as Councilmember Lawler mentioned, in Appendix D, towards the end, sorry, I'm looking for the page number, I think it's page D18, starts sort of the, again, very preliminary, very rough calculations of the number of units that these identified sites can accommodate, and the total capacity column for each of the specific property addresses identified is then summed with the next line of 88 to equal the 174.
But do you count the 86 though as part of
Yes,
it?
the 86 plus the 88. 88 ADUs and then 86.
Oh, because you're splitting it.
In the sites. So this is just totals.
Okay. Okay, so can you tell me if the property owners have been notified that their homes are included in this inventory?
We did about 2 weeks ago. We sent a certified letter to all of the 12 property owners. I should say, I think there's 11 here. We sent out 12. We did send out a letter to the church site also. Not expecting, based on the past history, that they would be interested, but just to basically include in the housing element that we didn't overlook a potential site. And the church confirmed that they're not interested in pursuing any sort of a rezoning. And the only other property owner that we heard back from so far is the property owner on Palos Verdes, who said he was amenable to being part of this process.
So what would happen if the owner says, I don't want to be part of this property, my property in this inventory? Does he have a choice?
Yes.
Can he refuse?
Well, ultimately, that's up to council, but I would assume we wouldn't necessarily want to proceed if a property owner were interested. So like I said, it's been about 2 weeks since we sent the certified letter, so we will follow up with some additional outreach and see if we can get a response.
So is his consent required then?
I believe the council could choose to rezone with or without a property owner's consent. I don't know that we would recommend moving forward without the property owner's interest in it. So that's why we're saying this is just preliminary, sort of best case scenario.
Okay, can you speak to why this particular area was chosen as versus, I'm just gonna say Dave's Avenue or Winchester or Becky Lane? Why did you pick these particular areas?
So the lots on the north side of Vineland are sort of flanked, I guess, on either side by some R18 and R20 zoning, including to the south side of Vineland. So it seemed to be a little kind of fit in with the neighborhood. They are larger lots that, if redeveloped individually, could accommodate additional housing units at an R18 zone. There's a lot of lots, particularly along Winchester, where the lots are already so small that individual redevelopment isn't quite as practical.
So is the expectation that these lots will end up becoming a subdivision?
Well, if council were to want to rezone these to an R18 zoning district, there would be a subdivision involved if the property owner were to pursue a higher density. They certainly could build a new single house, even if it were rezoned to R18. They could still build just one house, one ADU on the property if they wanted. They're not required to build at that density.
Okay, it also says that the plan says that these ADUs are required to be built with the new homes, right? And they must be deed restricted to low income. So can you talk about what deed restriction really means? Would it be a requirement that, that rents be capped at a certain value, for example?
So I do apologize. We were supposed to remove the deed restriction requirement, and we didn't remove it in all areas. That is not what we're recommending. And after consultation with the city attorney, the requirement for the ADUs would need to be more of an encouragement, or we could come up with alternatives for incentives for the property owners to build the ADUs. Most new homes that we see coming in now do include an ADU component, so it's pretty common. So if we could come up with a program to incentivize that even a little bit more.
Okay. So let me ask you a different question. You mentioned that you asked the church to be part of this and they said no. Did you look at the school? Because if we were to look at a school, chances are, like in the Davis Elementary School, chances are the people who would want to stay at the school will be the teachers, right? The assistant principal and perhaps even our fire department.
So we could certainly reach out to the school district, but because it is a publicly owned facility, we did not reach out to them. Additionally, specific to church sites, there are some state regulations that allow housing development to occur in their parking lots. So it sort of trying to incentivize housing to be constructed at church sites while maintaining the existing facility of use. So that's why that site was also looked at, is because of those specific state laws that could
And
allow
you're
that.
saying we didn't look at the school for what reason?
It is a publicly owned facility. It's owned by the school district. So we certainly can reach out to them and see if they have an interest.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea, because if we can get 20 units out of there, then we're done. The
Well,
other thing too is if we need more units, have you considered at the Sereno City Hall?
We actually did consider City Hall, and we are actually in the very high fire hazard severity area, and you cannot include sites in that area.
That's not what I was told by HCD. What they said was it doesn't really matter because housing is more important. And I think Councilmember Luthold was with me on that meeting. So you need to look at that as well.
We can absolutely confirm that.
Anything else, Councilman Tara?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other questions?
Oh, just a brief question. Is the site on Carl Avenue was identified before, is the large one, the 10 acre piece, 15191?
Yes,
Was that zoned in the previous cycle, rezoned in the previous cycle?
it was not.
Okay.
Councilmember Luthold has his hands up. It's a little difficult to see, so you may want to yell if you don't pay attention to you.
Thank you. No problem. A couple of quick questions. First of all, I'm not sure if this is a question for the city attorney or someone else, and that is regarding the meeting, the community meeting on the 23rd. What are the rules regarding city council member either attendance or participation in that?
It's maybe a question for the city attorney to answer. Steve Leonard, city manager. We were discussing having only the public attend the workshop this weekend. If council were to attend, and if 3 or more council members were to attend, it could be considered a public hearing. And that is something we were hoping not to have to public notice.
So with respect to, this requirement, basically, because it is a meeting that is being put on by the city, if a quorum or more of any legislative bodies, so that's, site and architecture commissioners or council members attends, then it needs to be noticed by noticed as a city council or site and architecture commission meeting. The Brown Act includes a number of exceptions for what doesn't count as a meeting, and that does include a community meeting exception. But the community meeting exception requires that it be held by another organization that is not the city in order to evade being, subject to the Brown Act. So that is the reason why more than a quorum or more of the council cannot attend that unless it is noticed as a city council meeting.
Yeah,
All right, so we can sort ourselves so that 2 people attend, but we should make sure that no more than 2 attend.
Yes, and if I understand correctly from the planner, it is going to be an event that is recorded, and it is something that people can review after the fact if they so wish.
All right, thank you. Couple other quick questions to address Ms. Perkins or our consultants. The property owner interest form, I understand that at least one city had great success with proactively getting many of their citizens to fill those out and making that the sum of their basically their application, and apparently HCD approved that. Is that something that we should consider being very proactive with our citizens, getting that for ADUs and or SB9 splits? And what do you think in terms of how much of our allocation we could do that way rather than dealing with these properties that we know some of these owners like Robin Ann Lane have said before that they were not interested in. So even if we haven't heard from them, we may get a lot of community opposition and we may get owner opposition. So how far can we go with the property owner interest form? And I'll go ahead and just pose my other question and you guys can answer them all at once and I'll be quiet. And that is, what about the zone of influence? We did this with the Hacienda Montalvo Oaks project before. Is there anything that we could look at bringing in that's in our zone of influence potentially. Thank you.
Thank you,
So,
Councilmember. Oh, go ahead.
Excellent, Andy, please go ahead.
Oh, happy to. There is a difference between ADUs and SB9s as far as garnering property owner interest. For the ADUs, we have a set number, which is 88, and that's a result of the formula that we can use that has been provided to us by HCD. So to go beyond that number, we would have to demonstrate that there is at least 88 people who are raising their hand saying that their intention is to construct an ADU within this next 8-year cycle. It's different with SB9 because this is new. So in order for HCD to count any SB9 assumption that we might include for our sites inventory list, we'll need to provide a demonstrable evidence that there is an intention at specific sites. So one way that neighbors here in Monte Sereno can make a difference in this RENA number is to, if they have an intention to build a property through the SB9 process, to go ahead and fill out that form so that we can keep their sites on our list as we move forward through this process for discussion. And the second question with the zone of influence, I'll leave that to you, Ms. Perkins. Thank you.
Thank you. And just one other note on the property owner interest form. Each property owner who has contacted us with an interest in an SB9 project, I have been referring them to our website and asking them to complete the surveys. The feedback has really been more of, our surveys also ask for any constraints about why you may not be moving forward with a certain project. And that has been the feedback, is that the 800 square foot limit is prohibiting people from moving forward with an SB9 project. So under our current regulations, it's hard to, or we haven't really received, I should say, people interested in their site to develop under the SB9. For the zone of influence, we certainly can look at that. We are currently working with LAFCO and have had a meeting with the county on the pocket annexations for the 4 areas that council identified, I think, about 6 weeks ago. And one outstanding question we have with that is that we're trying to get information to present back to council is how that would affect our RENA numbers. If that could help us, or how much additional allocation we may end up with.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the speakers earlier tonight, Mr. Lon Allen, suggested that we probably have a number of ADUs in Monte Sereno that aren't designated as ADUs. And I'll give you my personal example. I applied for a site development permit to put a basement underneath my house. And it was in 2009. So I went through the process, but I was forbidden from putting a cooktop in the basement. I put a dishwasher in, I put a microwave oven in, I put a refrigerator in. But at that point in time, I was absolutely prohibited from putting in any type of a cooktop, because that would turn it into a unit that could be habitable. Now look at that. Now here we are trying to figure out how we get these units into the city of Monte Sereno. So my question is, what do I have to do to turn my basement into a qualified, one part of my basement into an ADU and get it registered in the city of Monte Sereno so that it counts towards our numbers? And you don't necessarily have to answer that tonight in detail, but you know, it's it seems like Mr. Allen said that there's other opportunities throughout the city of Monte Sereno. And if you think of our 1,245 parcels and how many pool houses are there, there's got to be at least 20. I mean, when I was on site in architecture, you look at some of these pool houses and they're pretty nice. They've got a lot of facilities inside of them, you know, a bathroom, etc. So can you comment on that, please?
So we definitely can look into that. I think it may be more feasible for the detached structures. In your example of an existing basement, and in order to qualify as an ADU, there could be no internal access between the ADU and your main house. And you would have to have a 1 hour fire separation and a separate door to the outside. So there would probably be a decent amount of alterations that would be required in something that's attached to the main house existing. So the detached structures might be more of a path for that.
Okay.
But we could certainly look into it.
And junior ADUs don't count for anything, is that correct? Because I believe mine could be turned into a junior ADU.
Probably very easily, but yes, those do not count towards the
Okay.
application.
But the pool houses are an opportunity.
Maybe.
Okay, do they need to have a kitchen in there for them to be counting it as an ADU?
Yes, they would need a kitchen, a bathroom, and a living/sleeping area.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just to follow up, why aren't JADUs included? Because aren't those also supposed to provide, you know, cooking and bathing?
So the JADUs they're not required to have a bathroom. You can share the bathroom with the main house. And the kitchen can be, I think they call it an efficiency kitchen, which is much smaller.
Inefficiency.
Inefficiency. And the state does not recognize those as a separate unit. It's more, I think they're looked at more of a in-law kind of guest
Or live-in
type
situation.
or live-in situation.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I've got one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you take existing ADUs and count them towards arena numbers if we've never counted them before?
I will have to consult with our consultant on that. I don't know the answer to that. If you have an existing space right now, whether it's part of your house or a detached structure that's not an ADU, you can convert it to an ADU in its existing location and condition.
So let me ask it
So
a
we
different
could-
way. And our last arena cycle, we surpassed our ADU numbers. Can we get those extra units and count them for this arena cycle?
Andy, do you happen to know
I think
the answer to
I
that?
do have an answer to that. I posed a similar question to HCD staff in the past, and Mr. Rudin, please correct me if I'm mistaken here, but my understanding is that any overflow of units at any affordability level, that those numbers were taken into consideration as part of coming up with this cycle's RENA number.
Yeah, generally, you cannot count towards my understanding is you cannot count towards completion of your RENA allocation units that were constructed prior to your planning period. So once you start planning for the next RENA cycle, you are allowed to credit the building permits that are issued starting then for completion of your RENA figures.
Let me push
So-
a little. Suppose they decide to remodel the ADU that today, right? Can we count that as part of the ADU numbers?
If they remodel an existing, for example, detached garage or what was originally permitted as a pool house and remodel it to now qualify as an ADU, yes, we would count that as an ADU now.
And after July of this year, it can count towards the next 8-year cycle.
Interesting.
If it's, and let me just add to, if it's prior to July, then it would count towards our formula where we now have 88. So if we were to get 10 more units between now and July, then that would count, that would be added in our formula for the projection of the next 8-year cycle.
Any other questions? Let me just ask you a couple of questions. One is you went on changing some of the zoning from R144 state to R18 rather than stopping at R120. That's pretty drastic change for some of those neighborhoods.
And again, this is just a first discussion to bring something to the community and to council to discuss. There, along the south side of Vineland, there is a mix of R18 and R120 zones existing.
Okay, so if you had gone, so by doing an R18, how many units have you picked up?
So R18 is 5 units to the acre versus 1, so.
Yeah,
It's
but
36.
Yeah, so you picked up 36 units, you picked up 36 more units by doing that.
Yes.
So if you did the R1 to R120, then you'd only pick up what, 15 or 20 units, something like that neighborhood?
Even less because R120 is essentially half an acre.
Right.
So it would only be double what we have now versus 5 times.
Okay, so. And these are nine lots, right, that you've done this to?
Correct.
Okay, so you pick up 18 if you went to R20, but you're picking up 36, I guess, 4 times as much.
Plus the ADUs, but I guess.
Plus if they could put an ADU, but because it's a pretty small lot there. Get it down to an acre. And the second question I had was, could that zoning help these folks here if you change their zoning to an R120 or R18 or something?
It could potentially help with the intent to split the lot. It could help. There are frontage requirements that would need to be met sort of under the traditional lot split, the non-SB9 urban lot split. And it may also, it probably would not affect the building size they could have. So
Yeah. So
yes, for the intent to split a lot.
Yeah, so they could split it as they do before SB9 and put 2 houses if the lot size is R120 rather than R144.
Likely, yes.
Okay, it's something Mr. Jeans can look into, I guess, or may have already looked into. Yeah, you may want to take a look at it. And the reason you suggested the Vineland prospect, because there's already existing lots with that R120. Are there on some of the lots, and I guess we can make rules just for a set of people, but still there may be other lots like that that are R144 that may be located where R120 lots are close by, and the rezoning on that might help solve that. May solve that issue. We still have to solve our other issue as to what the objective standard is going to be. Okay, I'll just we're still doing questions, I guess, in a way, and then have to go to the public and then come back to it, but please go ahead.
Right, thank you, Mayor. Well, my guess is that these Vineland properties also satisfy that requirement of being half a mile from transit, right? Because that bus stop is along Winchester, somewhere between Vineland and Blanchard.
I can look again. The last time I checked, the bus stop does not have frequent enough service.
Right.
To qualify.
Right, okay. And then the other question was following up with the SB9 lot split. So when a lot is split by SB9, the resulting 2 lots cannot be split again by SB9.
That's correct.
But what if one of those lots was split by a regular subdivision? That can still happen.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
If I may address something that's a follow-on to that question, as well as maybe correcting an assumption that was made earlier, I just want to be clear that SB9 cannot result in a lot that is less than 1,200 square feet, which is a little more than a 1/4 acre.
What?
No.
No,
No.
1,200,
1,200.
not 12,000.
I'm sorry, I meant to say 1,200. I had that in my notes. I meant to say 1,200, excuse.
You want to repeat that for?
Yes, yes, and we'll be sure to make that very clear in the workshop as well. Yes, a lot split through SB9 cannot result in less than a 1,200 square foot lot.
Report time, check, please.
Could we, when we do our general plan, can we change our zoning in, what's the smallest pocket we can change the zoning in when we redo our general plan?
You mean the sort of the smallest area? that we
Yes. So could we take small pockets inside of R144 zone and identify those as R18 or R120s?
So, and maybe the city attorney might be able to provide some information in regards to potential spot zoning. We would need to look into that. There isn't really a defined area that is a minimum that would avoid a potential spot zoning. So we would sort of look at it a case by case basis.
Are you allowed to do spot zoning or
No.
prohibited?
So, sorry, so what would the minimum area be to avoid a potential spot zoning claim?
Yes,
I don't think that there's a specific standard.
perhaps Attorney Rudin can talk to that, please.
So I agree that it is a case by case determination. Typically, if you have, if you're creating one property that you're zoning specially and it's surrounded, on all sides by by properties of different zone, that is going to be a very clear cut instance of spot zoning. But if you are making changes to your zoning regulations to make contiguous zones and you're affecting multiple properties, spot zoning is less of a concern. Typically, the concern with spot zoning is, the grant of special privileges to particular property owners. And it really is going to depend on exactly what properties are being considered. But generally, the rule of thumb is if you're affecting, more than just, 2 or 3 property owners, the concerns of spot zoning go down, particularly if you're rezoning those properties to be contiguous zones with some other district. So if all the properties that you're rezoning from, say, R144 to the adjacent R120, and you're doing it for, 5 or 10 properties, and there's a legitimate public reason to do the zoning in the first instance, the concern that what you're doing is spot zoning is relatively low.
Right, so if we've got some areas in the city of Monte Sereno where it makes sense to increase the density from R144 to R120 or R18, then I think that's an opportunity that we should look at. And just because the zoning changes doesn't mean someone has to, subdivide their lot. They still have to apply to subdivide it. So I think that's a potential opportunity for us that we need to look into.
So that is what we have looked into to identify the 9 sites on Vineland. So as mentioned earlier, and I will confirm this again, any site within the very high fire hazard severity areas, we did not look at those because it's our understanding that the state will not allow you to consider those sites for increased
Right,
density.
and that's the whole
Which is
inconsistency with SB 9 that who cares about the wildlife urban interface or wildfires, whatever, is just. But you can't change the zone.
Yeah.
Okay.
May I ask one
Yeah,
question?
is there anything else here?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, please
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No.
Okay, now, suppose this becomes our plan. What action does the council have to take? That's one question. And the next one is, do we need to develop a subdivision plans for each of these lots now and rezone them to R18? Or do we wait until the owner approaches us to say, yes?
So short answer is if the city is relying on rezone parcels to meet its RENA figures in the site inventory that's submitted and certified to HCD, that the city has to complete rezoning within a set amount of time after the inventory submitted and the housing element is complete. So you would not be waiting for the owners to submit subdivision applications or anything else. It would be a zoning action of the city would take. The city would have to study under CEQA to the extent that it requires study under CEQA, which in this case, it probably would require at least some study, probably, adoption of a negative declaration, but I won't rule out the idea that the city may be required to adopt an EIR. And the city would need to adopt a change to its zoning map by ordinance. It may also require some minor tweaks to other parts of its general plan.
That was a short answer, I guess. Huh? Thank you. Councilor Lawrence?
Just one really quick question. I'm looking at the, the Vineland properties, and here it says that the sites have been targeted to rezone to 5 dwelling units per acre. That's R18, and that each single family dwelling would include an ADU. So I'm zoning in on single family dwellings. So these are single family residences. They're not multi-family.
correct.
And there's no way they can be.
Not under the R18 zoning.
Got it. Okay.
All right. Anybody else? Basically, I think when we adopted the 800 square foot thing limitation, the purpose was to encourage low income housing, because if an 800 square foot house is built, then it would be rented out to somebody who, would be a low income person. Because that's one of the goals of the state, is to try to meet the low income standard. But it turns out if nobody's going to build it, then that's not being served either. So we need to look at some of those stuff. I think at this point I have to turn it over to see if anybody else wants to talk on this particular agenda item. So if you want to, if anybody in the audience wants to talk about it, then you can come on up. Yeah.
I'll ask a couple of questions first. I was looking at page D6 in the EMC planning list, and that has a conflict there. It says 7 units, and then it puts 9 in parentheses. So you may be 2 less than you really think you are. 7 is written out, and then it says 9. And in your table, you've got 9. So you may have to subtract 2. I also looked at the individual lots. The first time I've seen this chart, I've looked at the individual lots along Vineland. You're proposing in a 2-block this area, 31 new homes and 41 new ADUs in your list. And then you're proposing 5 new units and 5 ADUs on the big area by Carl Avenue, which happens to be right next to 2 of the clients who want to do SB 9 lot splits, and you're creating a situation that they can't do it. So kind of a few interesting situations going on here. I like the area of influence that Mr. Leothol was suggesting. If you can get some there, that's great. I also think that you're going to get 0 interest out of SB 9. No one will come to you saying we'll do an SB 9 lot split until you change the 800-foot rule. So I think it's incumbent on you tonight to give staff some direction so that they can come back to you with some proposals that you can debate and then move towards how you do want to see SB 9 move forward. To say, let's push it down the road, push it down the road, push it down the road, gets you nothing. I also heard the EMC planning group person say that if you can get things moving by June, then you can count them. And if you can make some moderately quick decisions, like get something back to the council in a month from planning and make a decision, you can get some SB 9 interest right away. I did a little bit of an analysis, and I think you've got about 20 or 30 max units for SB 9 over the next 8 years. That's what I think you're going to get. I think you'll get about 7 or 8 this year if you change the rule quickly. Of those, I'm aware of 4, of whom I'm working with 3. The 4th one is independent, came to me through a different way. But people have come to me, other people I've turned down. I've said, no, it doesn't make any sense for you. So I'm not a proponent of SB 9 unilaterally. I'm on a case-by-case basis, which Mr. Leopold is against in some measure. But I think there are opportunities to use SB 9 to satisfy the housing element and to help the city.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for, anybody else from the audience? Anybody online?
Sure, I'll make a comment.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I think it was actually a question that was asked earlier that I'd like to answer that. To Tony's point, that given the way that SB 9 ordinance in Monte Sereno has been written today, if we were asked to fill out one of those forms to indicate whether we would be interested, then we would say no, like we would not be building. But if we were to change, and we're not in, again, we're not asking for a big change. If the change was made to something more reasonable, then that would change the yes. And so I think that there are some reasonable ways, and I don't think that we're talking about making rows of mansions. I don't think anybody's talking about that. And I don't think, Sean, I don't think it's about equity. I don't think that's what we're talking about here. I think we're talking about making common sense rules that are gonna make sense for the community and not try to shove 70 houses onto 2 lots.
Plus 41.
Yeah, like when we have like the opportunity where there's people coming here today and saying, we want to build, we want to stay, and we want to do it in a way that is sustainable for the community. And, or we can go, or we can build 70 houses on 2 blocks. Right? There's like, we can, I think, all have the community we want here. If we just be a little bit more flexible. And so I think today, I would like if the staff was, guided to making some sort of suggestions rather than coming back in a couple months and saying, well, let's talk again about whether or not we want to move it on. When the other communities in the area have looked at it and said, what we put together didn't make sense. And have already come back and said, all right, what we did was wrong, let's make it right. And they've done that. And the communities are happier. And we're hearing more about more people that are now starting to apply with very practical applications. And again, not trying to shove apartment buildings everywhere. So again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. What else on that?
Yes, we have Eric.
All right. Eric, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Eric Ramakrishnan with Berliner Cohen again, and I just have a couple of points that I want to make on this item. First, I want to reiterate the previous comments that we've heard, that if the city were to change its SB 9 ordinance, there would be interest in, property owners would have interest in proposing SB 9 projects that could count toward the city's RENA number. And on that point, I want to stress that under the current plan, the city is not just 19 units short. Because of no net loss rules, you want to propose a plan that exceeds the RENA target so that you don't create problems for yourself later. So I would just reiterate what everybody's already said, that SB 9 provides an opportunity if the city's ordinance changes. I also want to add that an SB 9 ordinance that is designed to discourage property owners from taking advantage of that law is a constraint on housing production. The inventory is not the only component required of the housing element. Another component is the constraints analysis. The housing element law says that constraints to housing production must be analyzed as part of the housing element, and that programs must be proposed to eliminate those constraints as part of the housing element. So I would encourage the city to address problems with its SB9 ordinance now rather than later to avoid possible sanctions from the state and possible litigation. But if the city doesn't solve its problems with SB9 now, it will still need to deal with them in the housing element itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else online? Okay. So we'll bring it back to council for discussion on this particular agenda item. Any discussions on this subject? I think we're all getting worn out now.
Worn out.
So,
Mayor Pro Tem, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's clear that we do have to integrate our SB9 ordinance with our RENA allocation. And we need a path to get to those numbers that will generate interest in SB9 lot splits. I think we do have to direct staff to come back with an integrated plan and work with our city attorney to identify what those possible constraints or opportunities are with respect to discretionary review of larger building sizes. And they're interconnected. Obviously, if you can do a lot split and you can build larger units, then you're going to generate more interest. Having said that, we are constrained. We do want to maintain the rural feel of Monte Sereno. We heard our residents talking about that they want to maintain that. That's why they live here. So there's a lot of different constraints, but I think staff does need to come back with, we need to direct staff to start to pursue other alternatives other than the 800 square foot units.
Okay, Councilmember Luthold has his hands up. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So actually, just expanding on what Mayor Pro Tem Mekachuk said, I have a couple of ideas. One is what he just said about looking at SB9 improvements or expanding that. The other is, and I'm not promoting this, I'm just putting it out there as an idea. What if we were simply to abolish R144 in Monte Sereno and make that R120? How many units would that potentially add without doing the SB9 gyrations as an alternative? So I'm putting that out there as a question. I have no idea exactly how many R144s we have. But many of them would choose to keep their R144, and many of them might be suitable to divide into, through a subdivision process, 2 units. I still think that SB9 is probably something that was never designed for Monte Sereno, and people are trying to shoehorn something in because it's what's available. And it's going to generate a lot of solution to a problem they have, or a lot of money to a developer, one or the other. So just putting the idea out there, rather than shoehorning on SB9, what would it gain us if we were to simply open up these big lots to actual subdivision and review that under our subdivision plans? So just putting that out there for staff to give us a number on. I don't know if you have that, Ms. Perkins, or if it's something you can bring back to us as an idea, and also get community input on that.
Yes, that is something we can research and bring back the information to council.
Yeah, my understanding is about 50% of the units are R144 in Monte Sereno, 50% of the lots, approximately.
That would be my guess at a minimum, but then we would need to clarify and factor in the very high fire hazard severity, as most of that is in the R144.
That's an interesting thought. I guess we're thinking about a couple of solutions. One is to try to rezone some items. The other is to look at this, and we still have to look at SBI 9 to see how we can flex that if at all. So on this particular item, do you need some directions from us or?
May I make one?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Can we also, I really want to look at Dave's Elementary School as a possibility.
Definitely.
Yeah, so you've got some options to see what can be rezoned. I mean, really having 72 units built on the Vineland and then the property, I know that was very creative, but I think it raises an important point because that is a lot of people on one couple of blocks. So you may have to rezone the whole city to match that up or do something else. But so the item, this particular item, what directions do you need on this particular item from us?
Just also add, sorry to interrupt, but just as before, as Ms. Turner pointed out, they told us that high fire danger does not matter at all. HCD said, we really don't care. So if you can look back at what they told me when we filed our appeal or look into that further, I think that's something we need to consider because you're constraining us with that. We need to make sure that that's actually a constraint because we were told that it didn't matter at all and the urban interface didn't matter at all. So we may choose not to constrain ourselves that way if that's the case.
And they also said that infrastructure doesn't matter because we should have done that 20 years ago.
Yeah, I think those will help us with the numbers, but when it comes to actually building, we still have to think about it. We still have to think about it. We don't want to be building homes where there is a fire danger, regardless of whether SCD is going to count them or not count them. So do you have enough for direction? I guess all you wanted was direction from us. And the direction on this matter is look at everything else to see how it's going to get the proper numbers.
Got it in the notes.
And direction is overtime.
Yeah.
And then I think we also talked about two other items. So we talked about increasing our density with changing to zoning.
Right. So
not a single property, but so that's one. And then the other one was this whole anytime someone comes in with a pool house application to see if that can meet the ADU requirements. And I can think of at least two in the past year that have come across that could have qualified as ADUs. I mean, got to get our allocation numbers.
Okay, and on the April 23rd, I know you said all of us can't be there. How many people wanted to be there on that meeting?
I'll be away, so.
You're out of town? How much?
Is the 23rd a Saturday?
Yes.
I guess I could be there.
And Sean, were you planning on being there?
I was up in the air on that. I expected Ms. Turner would attend if she could, since she is really our expert on these things. And I'm tentatively available to attend, or I could watch the video after. I'm open on that.
Yeah, I wanted to attend also, and I was trying to figure out if there's going to be three of us, maybe we should do it as a notice meeting.
Why don't I just watch the video and you and Ms. Turner attend?
Okay, that solves that problem, I guess. Thank you.
We attend over Zoom, right?
It's a Zoom meeting. Yes,
Okay.
it's a Zoom meeting.
We're not stuck at City Hall.
So we'll close this agenda item out and go back to our original item that we were on, which is the direction on the SB 9 ordinance. Any further discussion on the SB 9? I could kind of summarize it. I think given everything else that's going on, it needs to be looked at again, but the people who need to look at it is the Site and Architecture Commission first. So maybe you should send it to them with your new AVAC finding and try to, I don't know if you can get it on the next meeting. When do they meet usually?
The first Wednesday of every month.
Okay, so the next meeting is going to be the first Wednesday of May.
Yeah.
They've already had meetings this month, I guess.
You won't make the time.
Yeah, I don't think the time frame.
Today's the
would be feasible.
19th. You don't have enough time?
We should
Don't- don't
look
do it
into
now,
the
yeah.
discretionary option.
Yeah, so the answer was we can have ministerial option, but also if people want to do something different, they can go back, either pick ministerial, they can go to discretionary. So, yeah, that's, so they could look at that too, and then they can look at all the news numbers you have. So they only meet once a month?
Correct.
They may need to do a special meeting on it. So we can bring it back to us and we can move this forward, because you have to get your numbers done by June, right?
No.
No.
No,
End of the year.
End of the year.
The report is by the end of the year, but I
End of
thought,
the year.
a draft.
yeah, but I thought you couldn't count anything that was built after June, or?
So any building permits that we issue starting July 1st of this year count towards the next cycle for new units.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Which I
the
think
numbers
helps
you're
us
giving
in
are
this
things that
case.
have not been built yet, so. All right, okay, so that's good.
Should we do a joint session?
That may be helpful.
That might be helpful.
That may be helpful.
We might, be more
It'll be-
efficient.
It'll be a
getting
Zoom
everybody.
session, so it may be helpful.
Mhm.
So I guess whenever you're ready, maybe then at that point you can call a joint session of everybody and we can all talk at the same time. Good, yeah, because they were very helpful last time when we went through this discussion. We need to get their input on it. Anything else? Anybody else have any other comments? Nope. All right, so we'll close this item. Next item is the big one. Our city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the city manager's quarterly report, covers from January 1st of this year through March 31st of this year. And as you could see, we had a lot of robust building activity, 137 building permits issued, $420,000 in revenue, 203 inspections completed. The building department has also been very busy creating some brochures, which I included samples in your packet. These are for the most common permits that are applied for: kitchen remodels, water heaters, roof replacements, etc., as well as updating the building department website to make it more user-friendly. In addition, they have been developing what we call standardized plan check notes. So for instance, it creates less confusion for the applicant if the notes are standardized, more understandable, they know what to expect. And it provides for more consistency for the applicants in their review process. So some good things coming out of the building department. Not to be left undone, the planning department has created a new public hearing notice, which I think is fantastic. And there's an example of that in your packet as well. In addition to all the housing element stuff, which we covered earlier this evening. So I will not dig into the details too heavy on that because it is 10:30 already. This is late for us. But one of my favorite things is in the next category. Ms. Gonzalez Langarica is with us here tonight, and she has been under the tutelage of Michelle Estabillo, our city clerk. They attended 2 conferences together. And I just want to thank them for getting this hybrid meeting together this evening. They did a spectacular job. There is just a lot of moving pieces. We made it look easy. So thank you for all that. And thank you for your continued participation and training to become perhaps a city clerk someday. And the records management that you've been working with. Just a couple brief highlights from there. Neighborhood improvement pavement management project program. Very excited to announce that our PCI has moved to 72. We are better than most of our neighboring jurisdictions, which are at 70 and below. And you will be getting a full report on this at our next city council meeting through our city engineer, Ms. Khan. As well as the bicycle and pedestrian master plan update, which is continuing to be worked on by the Better Streets Commission. You will be receiving a report on that at our next meeting as well. Last but not least, a report from our finance department. I included in our packet a copy of our kind of the plan that we use to create our budget on an annual basis. I know that council has had a lot of questions about this in the past, and essentially it's a continuing process. It never ends. You go from one budget cycle to the next, and there's a calendar in there that kind of highlights that on page 2. And just wanted to share that with you. Because I wanted to touch on all 5 of our departments: building, planning, engineering, finance, and city clerks. They're all doing a wonderful job for the city. I want to commend all of our staff for their efforts. And I think the results have really shown themselves, especially this evening. So thank you. And I'm open for questions.
Any questions for the city manager? None?
I have,
Yeah, go ahead.
did you prepare dinner for us?
Yeah, really, I just missed that.
Very good question. You know, I did think of having snacks for council, like healthy snacks, granola, little bowls of nuts and fruits on the table when we're coming back in person. I thought of that a long time ago, then we went into the pandemic, and I want to have that next time for you. Some snacks or something.
Diet Coke, please.
And Diet Coke. We're out of those, aren't we? Finally.
Yes, we are.
I can't believe we ran out. We had so many. Okay, we'll get more sodas. So.
Any other serious questions?
I believe we have Councilmember Luthold raising his hand.
Councilmember Luthold, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to express my appreciation to the city manager and the staff. Great report, great progress, great content on all of the things that have been accomplished. And also, I guess I'll cover it right now because it very much relates to what you brought up, which is the hybrid meeting. From my point of view, out here in the ether, it went very, very well. So thank you. Hopefully my participation has gone well at your end. If not, let's talk about that and figure out how to improve the hybrid. But looks great from here right now. One comment on that, which is we need to, as we always paid attention before when we were in council chambers, we need to mute the microphones of the council while on break. And probably both for the internal recording and the external recording. Before we used to only have the internal recording. So just it's a technical challenge for us to pay attention to in the future. So that's it, and covers my comments later as well as my reports. I have nothing to report when we come to me.
Thank you so much. And I also want to thank the city manager and the staff. This went really well. So went very smoothly. There's only one mic that didn't work, so that's pretty good. And excellent job. And overall, things are moving along, and I appreciate you staying late. And hopefully everything's good. And I do want the food next time. I've been fasting all day, so you should know that. But that's why I'm kind of half present somewhat. Committee commission reports. Anybody? I know we have a whole list of reports. If anybody has anything serious to report, please go forward.
Well, if I may, I'll be very quick. I had Valley Water meeting this week, and they are going to start requiring people to reduce watering from 3 times a week to 2 times a week. To a reduction by 1/3. That doesn't mean you should water 2 times, but the same amount. And they are expecting to get to their 15% savings over the rest of the year. But anyway, that's the news for now. They do have suggestions for the new Moendo, so maybe, pursuing stormwater retention plans for et cetera in our landscaping and buildings for the future. So that I'll end it at that.
Thank you.
I've got meetings coming up the first week in May with the Santa Clara, with the West Valley clean water, and also West Valley solid waste. The BTA meeting, BTA Policy Advisory Committee meeting was canceled for last week, so there's nothing to report there. I would definitely like to compliment staff for making this work, and I believe that our city clerk, it's pretty late for her as well.
Yeah, we excused her a little bit ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's in New York, right?
Yeah. A little bit of time difference.
And I'm on my way to New York tomorrow morning at dark 30. So that's the end of my comments.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you for a job well done.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. I have some sort of report, but it's not important enough. I'll cover it next time. So thank you, and
Anything
night.
for future agenda items? Anything for the future agenda?
Yeah, any future agenda items? Anybody else?
Pre-order food.
All right.
I actually, when
Bye.
is our next meeting going to be another in-person one? And is it optional to attend in person, or is this just a one-time, let's test it, and we're going to be virtual for X number of meetings?
Thank you for the question, Mayor Pro Tem. So we have been, staff has been discussing this. I've been discussing this with both of our city clerks. And there has been a desire to perhaps go back to Zoom until, the recess in July. It's easier to orchestrate, and there's a myriad of other issues, although this did go quite smoothly this evening. And then we would go back in August, full-time, live, everyone in person, with maybe the exception of Mr. Rudin. So there was that discussion that we had with, that I had with both the clerks, and I don't know if Ms. Gonzalez Langarico wants to elaborate on that. It basically stemmed from their training that they attended up in San Francisco last week, and there's been a number of issues with hybrid meetings throughout the Bay Area, and not a strong desire to go that way. But
So
You go,
both
Len.
Michelle and I thought this was gonna be just kind of a trial to kind of figure out and get some feedback from you guys and kind of finish off the rest of the month or so. And ultimately, it's up to you guys.
You guys did such a good job that this sounds like a good way to go.
it's really nice to be back in person,
Yeah.
and wearing a suit, and I think it went smoothly. So whatever council desires.
All right.
I prefer your bunnies.
Yeah. I wore that all weekend.
So let's put that on the agenda for next meeting to decide whether we want to move to a similar hybrid. And that next meeting would continue to be on Zoom, I guess, because we haven't decided to push it out to a personal hybrid meeting.
So we did adopt the resolution this
Correct.
evening for the Zoom meeting.
Right, so it'll be Zoom, but we can still discuss it at the next time whether we want to do another hybrid.
So our next meeting will be Zoom.
Next meeting will be Zoom.
What I, just for another moment, what I would like to try is with Silicon Valley Clean Energy. They were saying that what they do is they'd like to have a group of people personally attend, but other people could attend remotely, and other people could attend, say, in Monte Sereno. And we could have 3 or 4 people here attending the meeting, so that any local people, they don't have to go all the way to Cupertino to attend the meeting. Kind of like a hub and spoke sort of model, which I think is could be very innovative and helpful.
So Mayor Pro Tem is referring to the Silicon Valley Clean Energy meeting among all the jurisdictions. So that would be a whole separate endeavor. We can discuss that.
Yeah.
Offline.
Okay.
I gotta go, I gotta pick up my son at the airport.
All right, thank you.
So you're saying
Me-
that we can decide, are you gonna send out another invite? Sorry.
No,
Who wants to be in person and who doesn't for the next meeting, or are we just
Well, no.
all?
So I
on Zoom?
think the next meeting will be in Zoom,
Okay.
and then I think at your guys' next meeting, you guys will.
Yeah, the next meeting we can decide whether you want to do
Which direction
another,
you wish.
move to a hybrid sooner or wait till you were previously suggesting, I don't know, you may have changed your mind on that.
And the
So
only
let's-
question I had for Councilmember Lutfold and Mr. Rudin, were you able to hear everyone clearly? You both came across as being very, we could hear you very well. So were you able to hear all of the participants, all the speakers, all of the folks
Yes.
on? Okay.
Yeah, and I could even hear Councilmember Turner when her mic was quote unquote not working. So I had no issue hearing anybody.
Yeah, it was good, and it did, the presentations worked well. I know that the clerks worked with the people who were presenting in advance. I don't know if there is provision for people who show up with paper that we used to throw on the projector. But that's something we may want to have in the future, but it worked great today. Everything was heard, and if you heard us well, it went really great. Visuals worked for me on 2 screens really well. If someone was working off of a single computer, maybe not as good. But with 2 screens, being at the remote location for me worked really well.
Excellent. All right, anything else? I get to bang my hammer again, Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Boise, for
Before you
staying
close
late.
the screen, can you make that bigger?
Thank you, Diane. You did
Let me just.
wonderful.
Yeah.